Auntie June asked Daeho if he wanted to exercise that day and suggested they begin, and then they start working out. The next morning, Uncle Yonggu returned home from Seoul. Auntie June greeted him warmly and asked how his work had gone, thanking him sincerely for his efforts. He responded that everything had gone smoothly and he had handled it well. He also mentioned that the doctor and his wife, Seol-hee, were planning to visit them. Auntie June expressed her surprise and delight, remarking that it had been quite a while since she had seen Seol-hee and that the visit would be a pleasant one. She then asked when they were expected to arrive. Uncle Yonggu said that if she didn't mind, he would invite them over right away. At that moment, Mia and Sua came downstairs and surrounded their father, both excitedly asking about the gifts he had brought. Meanwhile, Auntie June also asked whether he had had a good trip. Laughter and cheerful conversation filled the house as the family gathered together. Uncle Yonggu turned to Daeho and asked how he had been, jokingly inquiring if he had been guarding the house well. Daeho replied that everything was fine and, being the only man in the house, he felt it was his duty to work hard and take care of things. Later, during dinner, Auntie June served eel and everyone gathered around the table. She mentioned that preparing the meal hadn't been difficult, claiming she had dreamt about it all beforehand. She turned to Daeho and reminded him that he liked the eel tail, offering it to him with a smile. Daeho looked genuinely pleased and said it tasted amazing. Auntie June then told him she had made chive kimchi and encouraged him to eat plenty. She also mentioned that she had grilled garlic and abalone in butter, urging him to try those as well. While eating, Uncle Yonggu complimented the meal, noting that the eel tasted exceptionally fresh and remarked that he and someone else had gone on a business trip, which he jokingly hinted might have been a bit excessive. Auntie June then handed a glass of raspberry wine to Daeho, declaring that it should be passed to the man of the house and invited him to join them for a drink, acknowledging that he had grown up. Uncle Yonggu playfully asked if they should receive a drink poured by Daeho, to which the boy smiled and responded politely, thanking him for always working hard for the family. Auntie June poured another drink for Daeho, affirming once again that he was now a grown man and should have a drink. She passed her own glass to him and told him to take a sip since she didn't have a drink of her own at that moment, suggesting he use her glass instead. Uncle Yonggu raised a concern, wondering aloud if Daeho should really be drinking so much, unsure if it was appropriate. Auntie June dismissed the concern lightly, suggesting that perhaps because he was still young, he handled alcohol quite well and insisted the glass be refilled. Meanwhile, Mia and Sua were in the kitchen preparing food. Auntie June called out to them, urging them to hurry up and start grilling right away. Mia stood there, questioning in her mind why they had to prepare the meal at all. After everything was ready, the family ate dinner together and later retired to bed. That night, Auntie June lay in bed, visibly disturbed. Her thoughts were filled with worry. She felt troubled and believed Daeho needed to regain his energy quickly. She resolved to feed him well over the coming week, recalling how full of energy he had been before and wondering what had suddenly changed in him. Elsewhere, Mia was sleeping peacefully in her room. Quietly and cautiously, Daeho tiptoed inside, placing his steps carefully. He felt he had no other choice. Now that Uncle Yonggu had returned, he couldn't train with anyone else except Mia. Standing there in the quiet, he contemplated whether it was time to begin their exercise session. And then they start working out. The next morning, Mia came downstairs after waking up. Daeho was already there and casually asked if she had slept well. She replied that she had, adding that it had been a long time since she had enjoyed such restful sleep. Without saying anything more, she walked away. Standing there, Daeho felt a sense of contentment as if he had woken up from a pleasant dream. Mia, on the other hand, felt slightly off. She couldn't quite place it, but something about her morning felt strange. She attributed the feeling to the hot weather, thinking it might just be affecting her mood. However, a sudden realization struck her. She began to suspect that Daeho had done something while she was asleep. Elsewhere, Daeho and Gobong made a video call to Yunam. She appeared on the screen with a bright smile, clearly happy to see them. She greeted them warmly, calling out. They chatted casually, commenting on how hot it was in Taiwan, to which she agreed. Both Daeho and Gobong remarked that the weather was just as hot where they were. Yunam sighed, saying she hoped the year would pass quickly, though she added that it was hard to bear while it was still summer. Daeho offered her some comforting words, telling her to endure it for a little while longer because time would pass before she knew it. He also told her they should have fun together when she visited them next year. Yunam laughed and agreed, saying they should definitely do another video call soon. Then she ended the call with a cheerful goodbye. Meanwhile, Uncle Yonggu's friend Mr. Park and his wife arrived in the Yonggu's house. She remarked that it had been quite some time since she'd been there. As soon as the decision to visit was made, she explained the schedule had been arranged immediately. Upon arriving, she praised the house, commenting on how beautiful it was. She noted that each time she saw it, she was reminded of how well it had been constructed. As they stepped inside and gently touched the front door, she observed how rural and peaceful the area seemed. She pointed out that the door hadn't even been locked, which reflected how safe and tranquil the place was. With admiration in her voice, she said that a summer trip to such a serene countryside location was a truly refreshing experience and one she was genuinely looking forward to. Both of them entered the house and greeted Uncle Yongu and his wife. Uncle Yongu welcomed them warmly, saying it had been a long time since their last visit and told them to feel at home. He added that it was summer vacation, so they should take the opportunity to relax. Mrs. Seelhe expressed her gratitude, saying she didn't mind the visit at all. Uncle Yongu assured her that they would take care of them for a few days and mentioned that they could even visit the beach, suggesting it was a meaningful place from her past. Laughing, Mrs. Seelhe dismissed the idea, saying going to the beach at her age must be a joke. Mr. Park teased her, saying she claimed she didn't want to go, yet she had packed a bikini. He questioned if she was too embarrassed to wear it in front of CEO Cha. Flustered, she denied it, insisting that she had brought it just in case of an emergency. Mrs. Yongu chimed in, saying she had visited the beach not long ago and had a wonderful time, encouraging Seelhe to go as well. Seelhe replied that Mrs. Yongu could say that because she was a very beautiful woman, but when she wore a bikini, young people would make fun of her. Uncle Yongu laughed and asked what she meant by that. He added jokingly that if every country had women like her, the national birth rate would be sky high. Internally, Seelhe compared herself to Mrs. Yongu, thinking that although his wife was indeed pretty, she looked like an old lady. She eyed her outfit with disdain, thinking the suit she wore looked awful. She reassured herself that she was only a few years younger yet still elegant. In her mind, she declared herself the clear winner in comparison. Just then, Daeho entered the house and greeted everyone, surprised to see the guests. Uncle Yongu welcomed him back and told him to say hello to Mr. Park and his wife. Mr. Park smiled and remarked that it had been a long time, recalling having seen Daeho when he was young. He asked if Daeho remembered him and mentioned being a friend of his father, President Oh. The mention of his father confused Daeho, who hesitantly repeated, "My father." Mrs. Seelhe reacted with surprise and said, "So this is Mr. Oh's son?" She turned to him with a bright smile and called him cute, though internally she thought he looked rough and unintelligent. She commented that he had grown up strong. Daeho thanked her politely and excused himself. As he left, she thought to herself that despite his claim of being grown up, he still seemed like an immature boy. She didn't find him to be an attractive man. Later, they all sat down for lunch together. Mr. Park praised the food, saying it was just as he had expected and that he was truly enjoying it. June smiled and responded that she was glad he liked it, then suggested that he rest in the prepared room on the second floor. Mr. Park seemed ready to do so, but before he could get up, Mrs. Seelhe interjected, saying she needed to organize her luggage in the front room first. Uncle Yongu invited Mr. Park to have another drink with him and suggested that Seelhe go upstairs to rest. He asked Daeho, who had finished his meal, to guide her. Daeho agreed, confirming that she would be using Sua's room. He offered to guide her and led the way upstairs. As they walked, he pointed ahead and told her she could go up that way. She thanked him politely. As she ascended the stairs, Daeho stood watching her and muttered that she seemed like a very attractive woman. Seelhe turned back sharply, shocked, and demanded to know what he had just said. Daeho quickly tried to explain, saying he only meant she looked nice and that he must have spoken out of turn. Seelhe, clearly annoyed, told him it wasn't appropriate to say such things. Daeho apologized, saying he had only been looking for something to compliment because she was so beautiful and didn't mean to offend her. He added, somewhat awkwardly, that he had never heard someone compliment him in that tone. Seelhe laughed mockingly and said it might be because he was an orphan. Offended, Daeho replied bluntly that she was being extremely rude. That night, Mr. Park and his wife were asleep in their room. Suddenly, Mrs. Seelhe woke up, thinking she might have eaten too much marinated crab and soy sauce. She felt uncomfortable and very thirsty. She asked her husband to go downstairs with her to get some water, but he refused, saying he was too drunk and would make it up to her in the morning. Grumbling to herself about how inconvenient two-story houses were, she made her way downstairs to the kitchen. As she opened the fridge, she suddenly turned around, startled by a noise. She thought it had come from the eldest daughter's room and stood frozen, wondering what kind of sounds she was hearing. Curiosity took over. Looking worried, she stepped closer to the room and thought she just had to see what was going on. She peeked through the slightly open door, and what she saw inside left her utterly shocked and disturbed. Inside the room, Mia was teasing Daeho, saying it was surprising that he didn't want to have another workout session with her. She added that perhaps she shouldn't be doing exercises when it was time to sleep, but she understood his intention. He only wanted to help her feel better through the workouts. Outside the room, Mrs. Seelhe stood quietly by the door, listening to their conversation. Her expression darkened with disbelief. She went upstairs, her thoughts spinning. It was hard for her to understand why two young people who lived under the same roof like family would engage in such behavior even if it was only exercise. She thought of them as siblings, and this behavior was shocking to her. She returned to the kitchen, poured herself a glass of water, and drank slowly, still visibly disturbed. Back in the room, Mia was now praising Daeho for his impressive stamina and workout skills. Meanwhile, in her room, Mrs. Seelhe sat in silence, her mind unsettled by what she had overheard and imagined. The next morning, June, Daeho, and Mrs. Seelhe sat around the breakfast table. Aunt June remarked that when the men went on vacation, all they talked about was business, while the children had gone out early, leaving the house quiet. Seelhe, looking tired and distant, replied that she had managed to get some sleep. Daeho commented that she had woken up late and he was glad she didn't have to eat alone. Seelhe thanked him politely, but her mind wandered again. She thought to herself how someone with such a bright and innocent face could hide his maturity so well. It was still hard to believe for her that this young man was capable of such intense workout sessions. Daeho mentioned the pleasant weather and suggested it was a good day to go to the sea. Seelhe again found herself reflecting people who said Daeho had grown up, but to her, he still seemed like a childish kid. Daeho asked if she would like to go to the sea, offering to guide her, saying it was a beautiful place. Aunt June chimed in, reminding Seelhe that she had brought a bikini and encouraging her to come along. Seelhe hesitated, saying that wearing a bikini at her age felt inappropriate and she didn't want to go alone. Daeho suggested that Aunt June could come with them. When she agreed, he declared that it was settled and told them to get ready. Later, they arrived at the beach. Seelhe stood quietly wearing a bikini, looking out at the waves. She thought to herself that in the end, this had really happened. It was the first bikini she had worn in years. But she also felt self-conscious, worrying about how others might see her. She admitted, albeit reluctantly, that Uni didn't look bad for her age either. Yet, she wondered nervously how men might perceive her now. Aunt Uni asked if she was okay and said she would go rent a parasol, telling Daeho to stay with Seelhe. He nodded and asked her to return quickly. As Seelhe stood there, she noticed Daeho staring at her. She suddenly shouted, demanding to know why he was looking at her like that. Her thoughts grew harsher. She believed he was viewing her merely as a woman meant to be admired. Daeho laughed nervously and quickly explained that it wasn't like that. He only said what he did because she looked beautiful in the bikini. Still, he found himself thinking that despite everything, she had a flawless figure. Seelhe, however, remained tense and confused, her mind clouded with unease and uncertainty as she stood awkwardly on the beach. Mrs. Seelhe remained standing there, her expression reflecting clear disapproval, and expressed that she did not believe it was appropriate for him to say such a thing to her. In response, Daeho apologized, stating that although it may have come across improperly, he had intended it as a compliment. She appeared visibly upset and questioned him with a sharp tone, asking whether such words could truly be called a compliment. Daeho reaffirmed that it absolutely was and proceeded to explain further that when God created man and woman, it had been with the purpose of making them love and appreciate one another. According to him, this was the reason why men found women attractive, desired them, and eventually came to want them as life partners. He added that a sincere compliment fulfilled the role of expressing to a woman how beautiful she was, while also demonstrating how determined a man could be in his wish to make her his wife. He mentioned that this might be a universal phenomenon, but also acknowledged that such moments could become embarrassing if the woman had no interest in the man and paid no attention to his opinions. Seelhe stood there in silence, her expression indicating a mixture of irritation and contemplation. While the boy's remarks had clearly unsettled her, she found herself taken aback by the unexpected logic in his words. She began to think inwardly that despite Daeho's simple and somewhat naive appearance, he was capable of saying things that, in their own strange way, made a certain amount of sense. She reflected on how, from the moment she had arrived at the beach, her thoughts had been preoccupied with how men perceived her, how they looked at her, and whether they still saw her as a woman with appeal. There had been a quiet hope within her that some circumstance might arise in which she would be seen once again as attractive in the eyes of men. She then admitted aloud, though with hesitation and frustration in her tone, that while his words had felt a little rude, they were not entirely wrong. Still, she insisted that they leave the matter behind, since she found it difficult to express herself clearly in his presence. Deep inside, she confessed to herself that she had wished to hear compliments from other men, but strangely, it was this boy's gaze that filled her with an unexpected sense of joy. Despite the obvious difference in their ages, there was something in the way he looked at her that reminded her of a part of herself she thought had faded, a part that still wished to be seen, to be admired, to be remembered. And yet, she reasoned to herself that he was still too young, far too inexperienced to understand these emotions. In her mind, he was still just a younger man, perhaps no more than a well-meaning boy who had simply offered to guide her in some workout sessions. Just as her thoughts drifted in that direction, Aunt June returned, announcing that she had already located a place to rent a parasol and invited them to come along. Seelhe pulled herself out of her thoughts and agreed, thanking her sincerely. She remarked that it had been such a long time since she had seen the sea and that it felt wonderful to witness it again in this way. Both women walked to the spot and sat down, settling into the calm atmosphere of the beach. As they rested, their eyes drifted toward the water where they saw Daeho diving and swimming with carefree energy. Seelhe commented that he seemed to be thoroughly enjoying himself in his own unique way. Aunt June responded with light laughter, sharing in the moment. Mrs. Seelhe quietly observed Daeho and remarked that it was truly remarkable how he did not appear to be a depressing boy, despite having been orphaned as a child. She noted that he looked cheerful, happy, and full of energy. Turning to June, she commended her, saying that she must have done a great job raising him. June, however, responded modestly, saying that it was not necessarily due to her efforts alone. She explained that Daeho had always been an energetic and cheerful boy by nature. She added that he was the kind of child who did not require constant attention and that her role was mostly to comfort him only when needed. Despite his seemingly fragile and delicate appearance, she emphasized that there was a surprising strength within him. Seelhe agreed, acknowledging that he was indeed young and full of vigor. Yet inwardly, her thoughts began to drift elsewhere. She started thinking that if only June knew that her daughter had shared an exercise session with Daeho the previous night, entirely without her knowledge, she might not be so quick to speak so proudly of him. A deep sense of sympathy welled up inside her for June. She found herself pitying the woman who, while unknowingly praising this boy, remained unaware of what kind of beast he could actually be. Her thoughts grew heavier as she considered that June did not realize her daughter and this boy were engaging in exercise sessions on a daily basis, all without her knowledge. At that moment, Daeho emerged from the water and greeted Mrs. Seelhe cheerfully, asking if she would like to come into the sea with him. She declined, stating that it wasn't necessary and that he should go ahead and enjoy himself like any young person his age. Aunt June then mentioned that the heat was becoming too much and that she would go buy some drinks. Daeho offered to accompany her, reminding her that she had trouble finding the store last time. June, however, declined his offer, assuring him that she now knew exactly where to go and did not expect any difficulty this time. She instructed him to stay behind and keep their guest, Aunt Seelhe, company, pointing out that the woman had been quite bored without them. She reminded him that they should not repeat the same mistake from the past. With that, she told him she would return shortly. Daeho responded enthusiastically, assuring her that with him around, Aunt Seelhe would not find anything boring. After June left, Seelhe remained there with him and started reflecting once more. She thought to herself that now the two of them were alone again. Because he had been playing in the seawater, there was a salty scent lingering around him. She wondered whether a child like him, in such a moment, could truly find someone like her beautiful. Strangely, she thought perhaps that was something to feel grateful for. Daeho then offered to apply oil on her. Surprised and a little irritated, Aunt Seelhe questioned him about what he meant by that. She reminded him that she had already told him not to speak to her so openly about such things. She added that she didn't need sunscreen oil and didn't want to invite strange looks from others at a crowded place like this, as it would only embarrass her. He then suggested that they could go to a spot where no one else was around and that he could apply the oil on her there. She rejected the idea. However, as she continued thinking to herself, she realized that it wasn't actually the people around them that had made her uncomfortable about the oil. Rather, it was something about the intimacy of the act that unsettled her. Despite her objections, she somehow ended up letting him apply the oil. Daeho began spreading the oil on her body, stating that he was going to cover her entirely so that her skin would be protected from the sun. As he continued, she found herself thinking that now that things had gone this far, she couldn't bring herself to refuse anymore. She just hoped the whole thing would be over quickly. Surprisingly, she began to admit inwardly that it was a rather unique experience feeling the warmth of the sun on her skin as the cool, smooth oil was applied. It was soft, refreshing, and strangely pleasurable. Mrs. Seelhe turned to Daeho with an incredulous expression and asked how long he intended to keep applying the oil on her. She questioned whether he truly didn't know when to stop. In response, Daeho explained that he needed to apply the oil evenly or else there would be uneven tanning or sunburn marks. He began taking off his outer shirt, saying that they should just focus on a workout session if things were getting awkward. Seelhe looked at him with disbelief and anxiety. And then they start working out. Auntie June wandered through the street, trying to recall the way to the store. She found herself lost in thought, wondering how she could have forgotten the path so quickly. She hesitated, unsure whether to turn left or right. It was frustrating for her to realize how easily she had lost track of the familiar route. Meanwhile, Seolhee and Daeho were having a conversation about the exercise session. Seolhee expressed her frustration, feeling overwhelmed by the pressure Daeho was putting on her. Just then, Auntie June arrived, holding a couple of drinks. She greeted them both and handed over the drinks, noting that she was late again. Daeho joked that something must have happened to delay her, to which June laughed and mentioned the difficulty of finding the convenience store. She finally handed Seolhee a drink, who thanked her before taking a sip. Seolhee, feeling a sense of relief after the intensity of the situation, savored the cool drink. She thought to herself that after such an emotional whirlwind, a drink felt incredibly peaceful and satisfying. She found herself feeling content after the workout, the tension of the moment slowly melting away. However, as she drank, she noticed Daeho staring at her, which made her feel nervous and confused. She couldn't figure out what he was thinking or why he was looking at her so intently. After finishing their drinks, which were incredibly refreshing, June commented on how difficult it had been for her to find the drinks, but she felt it was totally worth it. Daeho, acknowledging her effort, teased her that it had been hard for her, but the drinks still tasted good. He offered to go for her next time, should she need anything. Auntie June asked him if he was really willing to go, to which Daeho confirmed, adding that the benefit of living close to the beach was the ability to enjoy the seaside and the view whenever they pleased. He looked to both June and Seolhee for reassurance, asking if they agreed with him. Seolhee, feeling the strong, cold sea wind, replied that it was indeed refreshing and enjoyed the experience. Daeho, agreeing, called it a truly wonderful experience. Meanwhile, on the other side, Park and Yonggu were having a conversation. Yonggu remarked that their second daughter was always studying, to which Park responded that he thought that was a good thing. Uncle Park then mentioned that he would treat everyone to a meal, telling them to eat as much as they liked. It was clear from his demeanor that he had been drinking. Yonggu, not wanting to let him pay, insisted that as the host, he couldn't let Park treat them. Park, however, urged him to accept, reminding him that they had already treated them to a delicious dinner at their home. At the same time, the rest of the family was enjoying a meal together. Daeho, excited about the food, expressed his gratitude for the meal, promising to savor it with full appreciation. Mia, smiling at her younger brother, told him to enjoy the meal slowly, but Daeho, eager to make the most of the time at the restaurant, insisted that they shouldn't waste time and should enjoy the food. Seolhee, sitting quietly, seemed lost in thought. She was reflecting on the events earlier and wondering if she had allowed herself to be swept away by the moment. Perhaps it was because she had enjoyed the beach too much, or maybe her mind had gone blank for a moment. She decided to excuse herself and went to the restroom, feeling a need to collect her thoughts. As she walked to the restroom, Daeho, having noticed her leaving, followed her. She was confused when she saw him there and asked what he was doing. Daeho, with a mischievous smile, responded by telling her that when her husband was sound asleep later that night, she should come to his room for more workout training. Seolhee, taken aback, asked him what kind of nonsense he was talking about and why she would come to his room for a workout. Daeho, however, seemed unfazed, telling her that if he told her to come, she should listen. He also warned her not to defy him, explaining that if anyone found out she had been doing workouts with a kid like him on the beach, she would find herself in even more trouble. He told her not to forget to come to his room after her husband had fallen asleep, adding that he would teach her more about workout training. He advised her not to be late that night and then left. Later that night, Seolhee lay on her bed, deep in thought. She seemed to be contemplating something, her mind racing as she tried to process everything that had happened. She stood up and went to Daeho's room. She asked him what he wanted and why he was bothering her again and again. He laughed and said that she already knew, so she shouldn't pretend she didn't. He further asked if she was just pretending or didn't really understand, adding that it was obvious. Then he informed her that he would teach her all the techniques for their workout session that day. She grew agitated and demanded how he could even say such things to her. He responded bluntly, questioning why she was even there if she had no intention of doing the exercise. He then asked her what she had been expecting when she decided to come, and then they start working out. The next morning, Auntie June was calling everyone to come downstairs, cheerfully announcing that breakfast was ready and urging them to come early. On his way downstairs, Mr. Park greeted Daeho with a good morning. Daeho thanked him politely and asked if he had slept well. Mr. Park responded with a compliment, noting that Daeho was always so well-mannered and suggested they head to breakfast together. Daeho told him to go ahead and that he would follow shortly. Then, turning to Seolhee, he asked if she had slept well. She replied that she had and described the night as truly pleasing. Mr. Park, catching her tone, asked why she was suddenly using such formal and respectful language. Hadn't she always spoken to Daeho in a more casual and familiar manner before? She laughed nervously and explained that she simply hadn't gotten used to the change yet. Daeho, standing nearby, added with a smile that they would grow closer over time. Mr. Park had started laughing as he greeted everyone at the table with a cheerful good morning. Yanga responded with a polite, "Nice to meet you, Mr. Park." Annie June glanced around and asked where Sealhy was, noticing she hadn't come down with him. Mr. Park replied that he thought she had been right behind him, assuring her that she would be down soon, and added that he had also seen Daeho on his way there. Meanwhile, upstairs, Sealhy had asked Daeho what he wanted to say to her. He explained that he always carried his weapon in the morning and wanted her to take care of it for him. Sealhy, confused and annoyed, questioned why she should be the one to take care of it. She told him he was being ridiculous. There were people downstairs already preparing for breakfast and they should be heading down to join them. But Daeho insisted they first have a quick workout session, saying they could finish before anyone came upstairs. Back downstairs, Annie June, eating her breakfast, grew increasingly concerned and wondered aloud what was taking them so long. She turned to Sua and asked if she could go check on Sealhy. Mr. Park offered to go instead, saying he had no idea what was going on up there. But Auntie June quickly stopped him, insisting he stay, and turned again to Sua, asking her firmly to get up and check on them. Sua stood up reluctantly, mentioning that she didn't have much appetite anyway, and began heading upstairs. As she reached the landing, she saw Sealhy standing there. Sua informed her that her mother was asking her to come down for breakfast. Sealhy, with a troubled look, apologized and said she wasn't feeling well, promising to come down shortly. Concerned, Sua asked what was wrong and pointed out that someone seemed to be behind her. Suddenly, Daeho appeared from behind Sealhy and casually greeted Sua, saying that Sealhy wasn't feeling well and he was simply helping her out. Sua was startled to see him there and asked if he had been upstairs the whole time. Daeho replied that he would come down once Sealhy was feeling better. With an odd expression still on her face, Sealhy added that she just needed a little more time. Sua told them to take their time, but as she turned to leave, she couldn't shake the uneasiness growing inside her. She found herself worried about the strange atmosphere and the fact that both of them were up there together. Shortly after, Sealhy came downstairs and apologized for being late, explaining that she had suffered from a terrible stomachache. Daeho followed behind and also apologized for the delay, asking if he could have some breakfast. Annie June remarked in disbelief that it was their last day there. Sealhy thanked her sincerely for everything. June glanced at the clock and said it was already that time, urging her to visit again. Sealhy smiled and said she would love to, mentioning how wonderful her stay had been and that she definitely planned to return. That night, Sua lay on her bed, unable to sleep. Her mind kept spinning. Something just didn't add up. Why would Mrs. Sealhy be doing workout sessions with a teenage boy she had only just met? She scolded herself for thinking that way, feeling ridiculous for imagining such things, but she couldn't deny that the expression on Sealhy's face had been strange. Daeho's behavior had also been suspicious, and she started to think it would be best to confront him and ask what was going on. Sua got up and walked toward his room, wondering if he might already be asleep since it was getting late. When she reached his door, she saw that it was slightly ajar. Peeking inside, she was shocked to find Daeho and Mrs. Sealhy still together, engaged in another workout session. Sua stood there frozen, her face marked by a mixture of disbelief and confusion. She couldn't understand what she was witnessing. Meanwhile, Daeho turned to Sealhy and told her that the session was over for the day. From that point forward, he said, she would be officially under his training. Sealhy, nodding with a smile, replied that of course she would be. Sua, still watching from a distance, was stunned. She couldn't believe what she was seeing. In her mind, she wondered if that woman had completely lost her senses. Was she seriously doing workout sessions at her age? Sua, watching them, felt her thoughts spiraling. She couldn't believe what she was seeing. Was that really Daeho? She had never seen him act this way before. It didn't seem like him at all, nor did it seem like the same Mrs. Sealhy she had observed earlier. The next morning, Mrs. Sealhy announced that it was time for them to head out. She expressed her gratitude, saying it had been the best summer vacation she'd ever had. Yanga bid them farewell, asking them to take care on their way home and welcoming them to return anytime. Sealhy turned to Uni with a warm smile, saying she would see her soon, though her goodbye hinted at a finality Sua quietly noticed. Sua thought to herself that although the woman spoke kindly, she could tell it was more of a "don't come back" in disguise. Meanwhile, Uncle Yanggu was asking Aunt June whether Sealhy had enjoyed her stay and what they had done together. Aunt June replied that she hadn't done much, just taken her to the beach once. Uncle Yanga commented that Sealhy still seemed really satisfied, to which Aunt June responded that she hadn't done anything special to deserve such praise. Later, as Sua was walking near Daeho's room, he suddenly stepped out. He greeted her and asked how she was doing, noting it must have been tough sleeping on the sofa. She replied that it had indeed been difficult, but she finally managed to get some decent rest. He smiled and she suggested they go have breakfast together. Still reeling from what she had seen the night before, she found herself unable to focus. Her mind was clouded with thoughts. Being around Daeho made her feel nervous now. She kept thinking about the session he'd had with Mrs. Sealhe and how she had never seen him treat a woman that way before. Her heart was beating unusually fast and she didn't understand why. Aunt June called out that she was heading out to buy groceries since the weather was so pleasant that day. At the same time, Mia came downstairs and said she was going swimming with Yuri. She noticed Sua and Daeho standing and chatting and teasingly asked what they were doing. Daeho casually replied that they were going to watch Animal Kingdom together. Mia seemed surprised, pointing out that Sua never usually watched TV. Sua quickly responded that she just wanted to see the part about cheetahs running. Mia smiled and said it was nice to see them spending time together, then wished them a good time and left. Now alone in the house, Sua turned to Daeho and quietly told him that it was her safe day. Daeho looked puzzled and asked what she meant by that. She explained that the last time had not been her safe day, yet they had still gone ahead with it and had gotten very close. This time, she said, it wasn't like before. This time it was fine, and she thought it might be a great opportunity for them to work out together. As Daeho moved closer to her, she asked nervously what he was doing. Daeho nodded and told Sua that they should have a quick workout session before Auntie returned, and then they start working out. Meanwhile, Auntie June was at the market doing some grocery shopping. She was examining the apples carefully, wondering whether they were fresh or not. As she continued looking through the produce, she suddenly felt someone staring at her. A strange, elderly man nearby was watching her intently, thinking to himself that she was an incredibly beautiful woman. The man approached her and greeted her with a friendly hello. Auntie June turned around, recognized him immediately, and asked if he was Yuri's father. She then introduced herself, saying she was Mia's mother. The man chuckled and admitted he hadn't recognized her from behind. He asked how she was doing. Auntie June replied that she was fine and mentioned that Yuri had been visiting frequently these days. He laughed and asked whether Yuri was being a bother. Auntie June reassured him that it wasn't the case at all. Mia and Yuri were best friends. At the same time, Yuri and Mia had just finished swimming at the pool. Yuri asked if they should have invited Daeho along. Mia looked irritated and demanded to know why she was bringing up his name. She reminded Yuri that they were there for a lesson, not for fun, and questioned why they would drag Daeho into it. Yuri said she only wanted to recreate the feeling of the old days, adding that it just wasn't the same without him. Mia warned her, saying she couldn't chase after someone else's brother and that if Yuri ever had a workout session with Daeho behind her back, she'd kill them both. Yuri simply winked and playfully suggested that the three of them could work out together sometime. Then, changing the topic, Yuri asked Mia if they should head to her house later for a cold drink. Mia admitted it wasn't a bad idea. Yuri smirked and said Mia was pretty naughty, to which Mia quickly retorted that Yuri was even worse. They both laughed and Yuri suggested they finish swimming quickly and head back, secretly thinking that Daeho would have to wait a little longer, but she was definitely planning to see him. Back at the house, Sua and Daeho were in the middle of a workout session. Elsewhere, Yuri's father was walking alongside Auntie June, carrying all of her grocery bags and clearly looking exhausted. June noticed and apologized to him, saying she felt sorry for making him carry so much. He started laughing and told her it was all right. She explained that she had bought too many things and couldn't carry them all by herself. He said it was no problem and that he would be heading home afterward, though he would appreciate a glass of cold water. June smiled and promised to give him one, adding that they were almost home already. Just moments later, Yuri and Mia also returned home. Yuri froze when she spotted her father already there, looking equally surprised. She demanded to know why he was there. Her father smiled and asked if she had just arrived. Yuri, still stunned, pressed him for answers, wanting to understand what had led to this unexpected reunion. Her father explained that he had just bumped into Mia's mother at the market. Mia's mother, standing beside him, looked at the two girls and asked if they had just come back from the swimming pool. Inside the house, Sua and Daeho were quietly listening to the conversation unfold, both slightly nervous and unsure how to react to the sudden convergence of family in the middle of their private workout session. Yuri laughed after hearing this situation and commented that it finally made sense now. Mia politely greeted Yuri's father, who explained that he and Mia's mother had simply run into each other by chance while out shopping. Meanwhile, Auntie June handed a glass of cool water to Yuri's father, expressing that he must be tired and could use something refreshing. He gratefully accepted it and suggested they take a moment to relax before he left. Yuri watched the exchange with an annoyed expression and remarked that he was unbelievable barging into someone else's house and making himself comfortable. She sarcastically added that he might as well ask for hot tea too, just to complete the picture. The conversation among Auntie June, Mia, Yuri, and Yuri's father was flowing smoothly. The atmosphere had become lighthearted as they shared stories. Yuri's father remarked that even the water tasted especially good and added that he had heard Uni June was an excellent cook. Uni responded with amusement, commenting that although he looked like a professor, he had a surprisingly good sense of humor. Mia turned to Yuri and asked with interest if this was how her father usually behaved. Yuri replied that she couldn't stop him and joked that maybe her father had started acting this way because of Mia's mother's influence. All of them were sitting at the table engaged in a casual conversation. Auntie June turned to Yuri's father and remarked that it would feel rather improper to let him leave just like that, suggesting he have some fruit before heading off. Yuri's father responded modestly, saying she didn't need to go to any trouble and that a glass of cold water would suffice for him. But Auntie June, with a warm smile, reminded him that it had been such a long time since they last met and insisted that it didn't feel right to let him go without offering at least a little something. He chuckled at her gentle persistence and said that in that case, perhaps they could stay a little longer. Yuri, appearing somewhat irritated, turned to Mia and asked if her father was suddenly some kind of special guest in the house. Mia replied nonchalantly, questioning what was so wrong with that, adding that all the guests were the same and equally welcome. She then suggested that they see what would happen next. As Auntie June went to prepare something, she asked whether she should slice the fruits or serve them as they were. Yuri's father, meanwhile, found his thoughts drifting. He began to think to himself that Uni June was truly a stunning woman. Despite her age, her beauty remained captivating, so much so that women her age would probably feel a sense of jealousy standing beside her. He thought about how remarkable it was to witness the grace and elegance of a married woman with 2 daughters. As his gaze lingered on her, he continued thinking about her charm and presence. Suddenly, June reached out and said that since it was summer, serving Oriental melon might be a good idea. Yuri's father, still caught in his own stream of thoughts, began to feel a sense of guilt when he thought of his own daughter and wife. He found himself conflicted, unable to hide the way his emotions stirred in front of a woman like her. He admitted inwardly that in the presence of such a woman it was difficult for a man to remain composed. He felt drawn to her elegance and vitality and even found himself longing for some kind of shared moment, thinking to himself that he simply wanted to exercise with her, using that term as a mental escape to mask his feelings. Meanwhile, back at the table, Yuri's father expressed his gratitude to Auntie June for treating him so kindly. He asked her, if possible, to continue looking after his daughter, Yuri, in the future. He added another sincere thank you. Uni June responded warmly, saying that she would be sure to invite him again properly next time and advised him to take care on his way back. Just then, Sua came downstairs and remarked that it seemed like there were guests. Auntie June, startled to see her, asked with surprise where on earth she had been all this time upstairs. Then, curiously, she asked where Daeho was. Sua casually replied that she had been listening to music and had no idea where he had gone. Yuri's father caught sight of Sua and noted inwardly that she must be the second daughter. He thought she was just as beautiful as her mother. He admired the whole family, thinking to himself how attractive and elegant they all were. Sua, in his eyes, appeared innocent, graceful, and full of natural charm. He found himself feeling oddly drawn to the energy in the house and quietly entertained the thought that he wouldn't mind joining any one of them for a workout session. The idea of spending time in their company even under the pretense of a shared activity sounded unexpectedly appealing to him. He decided right then that he would try to find a way to gently bring up the idea and see if he could convince them to take part in a session together. Daeho had also come downstairs and was surprised to see Yuri there. He called out to her, asking in a curious tone if she was really there. Yuri reached out to him with a smile and remarked that he was home, then asked what he had been doing. Daeho responded that he had just taken a short nap, then glanced around at the people present and asked if everything was all right, since everyone seemed to be gathered. Yuri gestured toward the man beside her and explained that it was her father who had just arrived and asked Daeho to greet him. Daeho respectfully bowed and greeted Yuri's father, saying it was nice to meet him. The older man returned the greeting with a polite smile, then commented that, according to Mia's mother, this young man was the youngest and was preparing once again for the college entrance exam. With a mixture of affection and melancholy, Daeho admitted that he wasn't particularly intelligent or good at studying. He confessed that there were times he considered giving up on college altogether and simply searching for a job. Yuri's father observed him closely, and in his mind, he couldn't help but think that Daeho truly appeared a bit naive, almost like a child. A thought crossed his mind, perhaps he could engage this boy more closely, maybe even involve him in some guided activities, with the help of Mia's mother and daughters. Handing over his business card, Yuri's father told Daeho to take it and to visit the school when he had time. He suggested that it might be better if he were the one offering advice, whether it related to college or finding employment. Daeho accepted the card, glanced at it, and expressed genuine surprise and admiration, noting that Yuri's father was a university professor, which he found impressive. Jun spoke up gratefully, addressing Yuri's father and thanking him for his kindness. She added that she had always wished for someone who could offer Daeho proper guidance. Yuri's father reassured her, saying that since he was still actively teaching, he believed he could be of some assistance. He told Mia's mother not to worry and assured her that she could place her trust in him. Daeho stepped forward again and bowed politely, expressing his deep gratitude. Jun once more urged Daeho to thank him properly, and Daeho repeated his thanks, respectfully addressing him as professor. Meanwhile, Yuri's father was already deep in thought, believing that he had made significant progress. In his mind, he felt that he had successfully created an opportunity through Mia's mother, and from this point on, he would proceed to win over each one, step by step. Later that night, Aunt June and Uncle Yongu were seated at the dining table, quietly sharing dinner. Uncle Yongu looked around and asked her why none of the kids had come down to eat. He found it strange that only the two of them were at the table for dinner. Aunt June explained that the children were full after drinking earlier and therefore wouldn't be eating dinner. As they continued eating, June began sharing more about the events of the day. She commented that Yuri had started visiting their home quite frequently and added that her father had even stopped by that very day. Uncle Yongu looked at June with a questioning expression and remarked that Yuri's father seemed rather impressive. Wasn't he a professor? June nodded in agreement and confirmed that he was right. She added that he had offered to give Daeho some advice about his future, which she thought was truly a generous and valuable gesture. Meanwhile, in Daeho's room, Yuri, Mia, and Daeho were gathered. Yuri and Mia were drinking while Daeho appeared preoccupied with something on his computer. Mia, already a little tipsy, commented lightheartedly that Yuri's father had looked quite funny while sweating, saying he appeared oddly adorable for someone who was a professor. Yuri frowned and asked how someone could call another person's father cute. She stated firmly that there was nothing cute about him at all. He talked only about studying, which she had grown tired of and didn't enjoy anymore. At that point, Daeho joined the conversation, saying he might consider visiting the university and meeting the professor. He expressed a genuine interest in having a look around. Yuri raised an eyebrow and replied that she hadn't known he was planning to retake the entrance exam. She added that, to be honest, she didn't recall ever seeing him study in the first place. With a teasing tone, she went on to say that even if he did study, it probably wouldn't improve his grades much anyway. Daeho responded with a hint of self-deprecation, saying perhaps it was because he wasn't smart enough. He admitted that if he failed again this time, he might just give up and look for a job instead. Yuri jokingly offered that maybe she should drop out herself and retake the exam with him. Later that night, Sua began growing increasingly suspicious of the three. Her thoughts became more anxious as she reflected on Yuri's frequent visits lately, especially since they always seemed to involve drinking. A disturbing thought occurred to her: perhaps Yuri had other intentions involving Daeho. She decided to monitor them to ensure they didn't try anything inappropriate. Quietly, she began peeking into the room where she saw that all three were drunk and chatting. Without warning, she stepped into the room and asked them with clear disapproval whether they planned to stay quiet through the night. Mia snapped back, asking what Sua meant by that and insisting they weren't children anymore, so she had no right to interfere or nag. Yuri tried to de-escalate the situation by calmly telling Sua that she didn't come over every day and kindly asked her to overlook it just once. Then she turned to Daeho and told him that if he was done drinking, he should head to his room and go to sleep. She said she would check on him eventually. Daeho nodded and replied that he understood, addressing her respectfully as Sua Nuna. Mia, feeling emotional, hugged Daeho and taunted Sua, claiming that she was simply jealous because she couldn't have him. She told her not to treat Daeho so harshly. Sua, visibly annoyed, moved toward the door and warned them to remember what she had just said. She stated that she would tell their father to check on them in an hour. As she exited, Mia yelled after her in frustration, questioning what was wrong with that little girl. Yuri then looked at Daeho and began to speak, but the night soon wound down. Eventually, all of them fell asleep. After some time had passed, Yuri woke up and stretched. She thought to herself that she had slept deeply. Glancing at the others, she nudged Mia and tried to wake her, urging her to get up since it had already been a while since her father had come to check on them. Mia groaned and told her to stop waking her up, complaining that she was too full from drinking beer. Yuri rolled her eyes and muttered that Mia was really stubborn. Once she fell asleep, she was impossible to wake, and this might end up ruining their entire plan. Then a sudden thought crossed Yuri's mind. The idea of having Daeho to herself for a private exercise session didn't seem like such a bad idea after all. With that, she quietly got up, exited the room, and made her way toward Daeho's room. She opened the door and softly called out to him, saying she was there. Daeho stirred from his sleep, surprised, and asked if it was really Yuri. She smiled and told him that Mia was fast asleep and completely unresponsive, no matter what she tried. Daeho admitted that when Uncle Yonggu had come earlier, he had pretended to be asleep, but in the end, he really had dozed off. Yuri approached him and asked if he could spend a little time with her, at least until Mia woke up and interrupted them again. Daeho chuckled at the suggestion, and she grinned, saying that it sounded fun. She challenged him playfully, telling him they could start a game where she would see how long it took for him to make her happy. It was clear she was enjoying the moment. They both began doing some light exercises together. The door suddenly swung open. Both of them froze in shock as they saw Mia standing there, staring at them. Mia glared at the two of them and accused them in a sharp tone of not even bothering to let her know what was going on. Yuri quickly defended herself, explaining that she had tried to wake Mia up, but no matter what she did, Mia simply wouldn't wake. Daeho tried to clarify the situation as well. He said that Yuri had come to his room alone, and since Mia was still sleeping, the two of them had started an exercise session together. Mia, clearly irritated, ordered both of them to stop their so-called exercise. She crossed her arms and added sarcastically that they must have been having a great time without her, right? Meanwhile, in another part of the house, Sua suddenly woke up. Rubbing her eyes, she began to think aloud, scolding herself for having fallen asleep when she had intended to check on Daeho. She tried to justify her drowsiness by recalling how exhausted she had been earlier in the day, having pushed herself too hard. Determined to follow through, she got up from bed and quietly made her way toward Daeho's room. But as she reached the hallway, she noticed something that immediately caught her attention. His door was open. Her steps slowed and she blinked in surprise, wondering if someone was inside. Feeling uneasy, she cautiously peeked into the room, and the moment her eyes caught sight of what was going on, she froze in utter shock. Her mind reeled as she tried to process the unexpected scene in front of her. Thoughts raced through her head as she stood frozen, silently exclaiming to herself in disbelief, questioning what on earth was happening right then. Sua's expression darkened the moment she saw what was happening inside the room. Through the half-open door, she saw Yuri and Mia engaging in an exercise session with Daeho. Back in her own room, Sua lay on her bed, staring blankly at the ceiling with a mix of disgust and anger written all over her face. Her thoughts churned restlessly. She had known about Daeho's workout sessions with Yuri, but what shocked her most was learning that Mia had also joined them. She simply couldn't believe it. Her thoughts turned bitter and confused. Mia had always been like a sister to her. She couldn't comprehend how Mia could do such a thing with Daeho. It made no sense to her at all. The next morning, Yuri got ready to head back to her home. She politely thanked Aunt June, expressing her gratitude and promising that she would visit again soon. Aunt June smiled and bid her goodbye, then reminded Yuri to tell her father that she would be inviting him over for dinner sometime soon. Mia turned to her mother and announced that she would be going to the cafe with Yuri. Meanwhile, Daeho was also nearby and said his goodbyes to Yuri as well. As he turned to go back into his room, he noticed Sua standing silently on the balcony, her eyes fixed on him. She called out to him and asked him to come over. Without waiting for his response, she turned and led him into her room. Once inside, she revealed everything she had witnessed the previous night. Daeho listened quietly, and when she finished, he looked at her and acknowledged it, confirming that she had, in fact, seen everything. Sua's voice trembled with disappointment as she told him she was shocked that he could do something like that. She said she was utterly disappointed in him. She reminded him that Mia had always treated him like a brother and insisted that what he had done was just wrong. She admitted she might be able to understand Yuri's involvement, but she couldn't accept that he had involved Mia in such a way. Daeho looked at her for a moment and calmly replied that if she couldn't understand the situation, then perhaps he should help her come to terms with it. Without another word, he reached out and grabbed her hand. Then, in a low voice, he told her that if she refused to accept it, he would have no choice but to force her to. And then they start working out. Meanwhile, at a local cafe, Mia stood on the warm pavement, fanning herself. The sun bore down on her, and she grumbled to herself about how hot it was. She glanced around and grew increasingly irritated, thinking that the stupid Yuri girl had likely gone back home and forgotten their plan to meet up. She sighed and began to suspect that she had come all the way there for nothing. Her thoughts drifted to Daeho, wondering what he might be doing back at home. She recalled how tired he had seemed the night before. With no sign of Yuri, Mia finally decided to return home and headed toward Daeho's room to see if he was there. But when she arrived, she was surprised to find the room empty. He wasn't at home. Her brows furrowed as she scanned the area, confused. Then, out of nowhere, she heard a strange noise coming from across the hall. Her ears perked up and she paused, trying to make sense of the sound. Curious and slightly alarmed, Mia cautiously approached Sua's door, standing just outside. She stared at it, uncertain. Her mind was in turmoil as she asked herself what was happening in there. A sense of unease crept over her. She wondered whether she should open the door or not. But then she hesitated. If she were to barge in without knocking, it could cause a serious fuss. Now caught in a moment of internal conflict, she stood frozen, anxiously debating what she should do next. Mia stood frozen outside the room, visibly stunned as her thoughts raced. A wave of shock crashed over her, and without thinking, she burst through the door. Mia screamed in disbelief at the sight before her. She stared at Daeho and Sua, clearly in the middle of a workout session, and demanded to know what on earth was going on. She was too shocked to process it all and blurted out that she had heard them exercising and simply couldn't believe it. The entire situation seemed unreal. Later that afternoon, all of them sat quietly at the dining table for lunch. The atmosphere was heavy and unusually silent. Auntie June looked around and asked if something was wrong, wondering why everyone was eating so quietly. Uncle Yanga chuckled and commented that it felt like there had been some intense argument earlier. He joked that if they were going to fight so much, they might as well just physically clash and get it over with. Mia sat stiffly, lost in thought, replaying the earlier scene over and over in her mind. That night, Yuri, Sua, and Daeho gathered in one of the rooms to discuss the situation. Tension lingered in the air. Mia, arms crossed and brows furrowed, asked if they all thought this entire mess was her fault. Sua didn't hesitate and said yes unless she herself was the one to blame, which she doubted. She added pointedly that Mia, being the oldest, should have known better. Mia shot back, saying that Sua always ignored her but now suddenly wanted to treat her like a grown woman just to place blame. She insisted that she had only been helping Daeho with his workout and had no bad intentions. Daeho, feeling cornered, jumped in and admitted that he had panicked earlier but honestly believed that if Mia hadn't been there, he would have been in a much more difficult situation. Sua silenced him coldly, telling him not to interrupt and accusing him of being the root cause of the entire conflict. Mia, still fuming, argued that someone should be considered an adult when they pass the age of 20 and that it wasn't right to leave someone clueless about exercise or other important matters. She defended herself, saying she had simply helped Daeho improve. Sua wasn't convinced and snapped back, questioning why Mia didn't stop after one session if it was only about teaching. She brought up Yuri again, asking what her presence had to do with teaching. Was that also part of the lesson plan? Mia grew angry and insisted that it wasn't what Sua thought. Tired of the argument, Daeho stood up and pleaded with both of them to stop fighting. He said he felt terribly guilty and that the situation had gotten this bad because of him. He looked at both of them and admitted he didn't believe either of their actions had been wrong. He said they were both like sisters to him, and because of that he cherished them equally. He then suggested something unexpected, that the three of them have their exercise sessions together from now on. Sua and Mia were both shocked and stared at him in disbelief, asking if he was being serious. Mia asked Daeho what he had just said. He replied that he simply meant he wanted to work out with both of them. In response, Mia slapped him and demanded to know if he was out of his mind, questioning what was wrong with him. Sua, visibly angry, warned him not to even entertain such a thought, calling it utterly disgusting. Daeho responded by telling them to forget it, stating that he wouldn't exercise with either of them for a while. He expressed that he no longer wanted to witness them fighting like that again. Sua reacted in disbelief, asking what he meant by that and saying it was a bit too much. Daeho explained that they were both very precious to him and he couldn't bring himself to choose just one of them for training. With that, he left the room. Mia called after him, telling him to stop and wait, but he didn't listen and walked away. Sua remained standing in the room, reflecting on what he had said and wondering if he truly meant that they were both precious to him. That night, Sua lay in bed, contemplating whether Daeho had genuinely meant what he said. She wondered if he truly intended never to train or exercise with her again, as the sessions she had shared with him had felt incredibly fulfilling. Meanwhile, in her own room, Mia was also deep in thought. She considered how strange and unpredictable Daeho was, questioning how he could have the audacity to make such a threat. Despite her irritation, she muttered to herself that it didn't matter anyway and she would see whether he could resist when she eventually asked him to work out again. Daeho, lying in his own room with his eyes closed, was also absorbed in thought. He found himself unable to choose between the two of them. The truth was he wanted to exercise with both Mia and Sua. The next morning, Mia went to Daeho's room and asked him to open the door, saying that they needed to talk. When he finally opened it, she was shocked by his appearance. He was already dressed and ready to go. She asked him if he had gotten enough rest and whether he was heading to see Gobong. Daeho replied that he was going to meet Yuri's father instead. Mia, surprised, repeated the name in disbelief at Yuri's father. At the same time, downstairs, Yooni, June, and Yanga were getting ready to leave with Daeho. Yooni told her husband that she was ready to go. Just then, Daeho came downstairs. Aunt June, noticing his neatly dressed appearance, complimented him, saying he looked very handsome in his shirt. Daeho laughed and thanked her. Mia, seeing her parents preparing to leave, asked her mother where they were going with Daeho all dressed up like that. Her mother explained that they were going to meet Yuri's father, who had invited them to talk about Daeho's college plans. She said they were visiting his office on campus. Mia questioned why it had to be that day. Meanwhile, Uncle Yanga kept reminding them they were running late and urged them to hurry. Aunt June replied that they were just about to leave, and then the three of them set off. After some time, they arrived at Mythic University and were impressed by the size and appearance of the campus. As they walked toward Yuri's father's office, Daeho remarked to Aunt June that the place seemed bigger and better than the university Mia attended. Aunt June agreed, mentioning that Mia went to a women's university which was smaller. She added that it would be wonderful if Daeho could study in a place like this. Daeho replied that he wasn't sure he was smart enough for it, to which she responded with encouragement, assuring him that he could absolutely do it if he studied hard from that point on. Eventually, they reached the office where a nameplate reading Suhak Kong hung on the door. Daeho and Aunt June opened the door and entered. Yuri's father welcomed them and thanked them for coming all the way. Aunt June replied that they should be the ones thanking him and appreciated him making the time for them. He explained that he had just wrapped up a project and had some spare time. Offering them snacks, he told them there was no need to rush and suggested they sit down for a chat and have dinner later. Privately, Yuri's father was thinking that inviting Yooni June there had been a great success, and he now intended to slowly break the silence between them. He couldn't help but notice how beautiful she looked in her elegant attire. Realizing he hadn't offered them any drinks, he suddenly apologized and said they'd need to get something from outside. Turning to Daeho, he asked if he could go to the cafe to get some iced coffee. Daeho agreed, mentioning that he didn't drink coffee and would get orange juice instead. Yuri's father told him he could get something to eat as well if he wanted. Daeho nodded and said he would pick up some snacks too. As Daeho left, Yooni June and Suhak remained seated in the office. Suhak commented that Daeho could be quite a handful. June laughed and agreed, saying he was always so energetic and full of life. Lost in his thoughts once again, Suhak found himself unable to resist admiring her beauty. He thought to himself how stunning she looked. After a brief silence, he addressed her formally and asked if she could stand up for a moment. She looked confused and asked what the matter was. Professor Suhak mentioned that it just so happened he had something he wanted to show her, and if she could stand up, he would appreciate it. Yooni June appeared confused and hesitantly asked what exactly he wanted to show her. He then requested that she take a look at the books on a nearby shelf. As she turned toward the shelf and inquired which books he was referring to, he pointed to a row of volumes and explained that all of them were written by him. June was visibly surprised by the revelation and expressed her astonishment, remarking that she could hardly believe it. She complimented him, saying that it was an impressive number of books and that he was truly remarkable. Professor Suhak, flattered by her praise, responded by saying that Mia's mother was just a very pretty woman. Internally, he was overwhelmed by a desire to touch her. Meanwhile, June was silently thinking that Yuri's father seemed to be such a great and accomplished man. With a humble laugh, he remarked that it wasn't really a big deal and that it was merely the result of having spent so many years in academia. She told him that it meant a great deal to her to have someone as accomplished as him advising Daeho, and she sincerely thanked him. He replied that, since it was Mia's mother asking, he would certainly do his best to support them with whatever abilities he had. She expressed her gratitude again, saying she had no idea how to repay his kindness. While the conversation continued, Suhak sat back in his seat and mused privately that everything seemed to be progressing smoothly. He assumed that perhaps it was because she was a simple housewife and, in his view, the progress had already advanced significantly. Abruptly, he invited her to come over to where he was seated. Internally, he schemed that if he could just apply a bit more pressure using his authority, she would eventually yield. At that moment, his phone began to ring, interrupting the situation. He remarked aloud that he was in the middle of an important discussion and had forgotten to silence his phone. Upon checking the screen, he noticed that the call was from the principal and immediately decided that he could not ignore it. Answering the call, he introduced himself as Kong Suhak and asked what needed to be done. Behind him, June stood quietly, observing him with admiration. She thought to herself that Yuri's father was indeed a hardworking man, and perhaps it was that very sense of dignity and professionalism that defined a true professor. She hoped Daeho would grow up to be as admirable a person as he was. Professor Suhak was then informed that he needed to head to the principal's office right away. Disappointed, he realized that his carefully laid plan had just been disrupted. Turning to June, he told her that an urgent matter had come up and he needed to meet the principal immediately. She asked whether they should reschedule their meeting for another time. He quickly assured her that it wouldn't be necessary, explaining that he would return as soon as possible and asked if she could wait there with Daeho. She agreed and mentioned that she would spend the time reading some of his books while waiting. He walked away, frustrated by the lost opportunity, and promised that he would handle the situation quickly and return at the speed of light. Shortly after, Daeho entered the office and asked if the professor had requested that they stay and wait for him. Aunt June confirmed that they were indeed to wait, explaining that it was an urgent meeting and they had no choice. Daeho agreed, saying there wasn't really anything else to do anyway. June picked up one of the books and showed it to Daeho, pointing out that they had all been written by Yuri's father. Daeho expressed his amazement and she began to praise the professor, remarking that he seemed to be a genuinely admirable individual. She added that she hoped Daeho would study diligently and grow into such a remarkable man himself. But then she was caught off guard when she noticed Daeho staring at her. Startled, she told him not to interrupt what she considered a pleasant conversation. Daeho, however, stated that he wanted to start exercising. She, confused, asked what he was doing. He reassured her that she could continue talking and that he was listening, but added that there was nothing more urgent to him than his workout session, and then they start working out. On the other side, Yuri's father appeared to be in quite a hurry. As he looked at his phone, he thought to himself that it was still not too late. He resolved that he would speak with Mia's mother just as he had initially intended. While rushing toward his office, he planned to send that bothersome Daeho away again, just like before. Meanwhile, in the office, June and Daeho had just completed their workout session. Daeho, still energized, expressed his desire to work out once more. She responded with exasperation, reminding him that they didn't know when the professor might return and that it wasn't appropriate to continue. Just then, the door suddenly opened and Yuri's father re-entered the room. He greeted her warmly, saying that he was back. She, still browsing through the books on the office shelf, was startled by his sudden appearance and responded with a surprised, "Oh, you're back, that's nice." Daeho, too, acknowledged his return and informed him that he had brought the drinks. Yuri's father acknowledged Daeho and asked Mia's mother to take a seat so that they could begin the consultation. Internally, he was trying to stay calm and think quickly, ready to steer the conversation in the direction he had planned. However, she politely declined and explained that she needed to leave. He looked at her with concern and asked what was wrong. She explained that it seemed the professor had already had a long and busy day and they felt they had imposed too much on him. Therefore, she suggested that they reschedule the meeting for another day. She then told Daeho that it was time to go. Yuri's father tried to stop her, saying there was no need to leave, but Daeho respectfully excused himself and left with June. As they walked away, Daeho quietly asked her why she had left so suddenly. She responded that she felt the need to clean herself up because she was feeling unclean. Daeho, understanding her discomfort, told her he knew a really good place where she could freshen up and asked if she would like to go there. She agreed quickly, stating that she had dressed up nicely earlier but now felt she didn't look good in the same clothes. He reassured her and led the way. Eventually, the two of them arrived at a motel room. She was taken aback by the location and asked in surprise what they were doing there. He laughed and said that fortunately she would be the one paying for it. He assured her that it was a spacious place and there was no need to worry. As she stood at the entrance, her thoughts raced. It was her first time being in a place like that and she didn't know how to react. She questioned aloud how they could even be there. Daeho, amused, teased her by asking if she and Uncle Yongo had never gone to a place like this during their dating days. He found it hard to believe. She replied that the only time they had ever been to a hotel was during their honeymoon, and even then, it had just happened because they hadn't managed to get a ticket elsewhere. Daeho, brushing off the awkwardness, told her they should hurry up and clean their clothes. She eventually went into the bathroom to wash up and began showering. From outside the door, Daeho called out, urging her to come out. He insisted that they should do their workout session there, and then they start working out. When they reached home, Daeho headed upstairs. To his surprise, he found Mia in his room. He was startled to see her there. Mia, sitting calmly, asked if he had a good conversation with Yuri's father and questioned why it had taken so long. Daeho explained that the professor had been busy and that they planned to meet again another time. Suddenly, Mia raised her voice, demanding to know how long he planned to keep avoiding her. She reminded him again, as she had before, that she wouldn't do anything until he made up with Sua. Her words left the room tense and quiet. Meanwhile, in a hotel restaurant, Mr. Park and his wife Seol-hee were having dinner. Seol-hee mentioned that she had been thinking lately. Her husband asked what it was about and she said that Uni had treated them very well during their visit to Mr. Cha's place. She suggested inviting Yooni to the city this time. Mr. Park thought it was a good idea but mentioned uncertainty about Mr. Cha's availability, saying he seemed very busy lately. Seol-hee reassured him, saying that she wasn't planning to invite Mr. Cha anyway, just Yooni. She recalled that Yooni had told her it had been a while since her last visit to the city. Mr. Park asked, surprised, if she meant Mrs. Cha by herself. Seol-hee added that Yooni could bring Daeho along, mentioning that he likely hadn't visited the city much either. Mr. Park seemed unsure, but she emphasized that having Daeho with her would make Yooni feel more comfortable. Mr. Park eventually agreed. Seol-hee then picked up her phone and dialed Yooni's number, saying they should let her know right away. On the other end, Yooni was washing dishes when she answered the call. She told Seol-hee that she was just a housewife and had the time, but she would ask her husband and get back to her. Mr. Cha, who was eating at the table, asked why Mrs. Seol-hee had called. Yooni explained that she was invited to visit the city with Daeho as a kind gesture of appreciation. Sua, also at the table, reacted with surprise, questioning why the invitation was extended only to them. Yooni reminded her that both she and her father had already visited the city many times, unlike her and Daeho. Daeho joined the conversation, expressing excitement about the trip and saying it would be fun. Mia, who was sitting nearby, commented sarcastically that the city only give people headaches and told him to keep quiet while eating. Daeho insisted he wanted to get used to the city regardless. Uncle Yongu, sitting at the table as well, thought to himself that if he weren't so busy, he would have joined them. He acknowledged that it had been a long time since Yooni last visited the city and told her she could go. She thanked him and he turned to Daeho, instructing him to take good care of her. Daeho promised to do his best. The next day, Daeho and Yooni boarded a train heading to the city. As they traveled, Daeho expressed his excitement, saying he felt the trip would be fun. Yooni admitted that it had been a long time since her last visit and she felt a little nervous. She mentioned that Seol-hee would meet them at the station and they would just follow her lead. Daeho said they should be thankful for Seol-hee's hospitality and Yooni reminded him to be polite and well-mannered. He assured her that he would behave properly. When they arrived at the station, Daeho spotted Seol-hee approaching and pointed her out. Both of them greeted her warmly. Seol-hee welcomed them to the city. Daeho thanked her and Yooni expressed gratitude for coming to meet them. Seol-hee smiled and told Daeho that she planned to show him many places around the city. He thanked her enthusiastically. Before they could leave, Yooni said she needed to use the bathroom because her nerves were getting to her. Seol-hee directed her toward the restroom and waited outside with Daeho. While they stood there alone, Seol-hee said he must be hungry and offered to buy him something delicious. Daeho smirked slightly and remarked that, since they were alone, shouldn't she speak to him with more respect? With a playful tone, Seol-hee replied, "Okay, yes, master." While in the bathroom, Auntie June sat quietly, lost in thought. It had been a long time since she had last visited Seoul and the nervousness was beginning to set in. But as she composed herself, she reminded herself that there was no need to be anxious since she was with Daeho. With renewed resolve, she told herself it was time to regain her usual composure and confidence. Stepping out of the bathroom, she approached the others and acknowledged that she might have kept them waiting. She then suggested they get going. Daeho looked at her with concern and asked whether she was feeling better, noticing how nervous she had been earlier. Seol-hee proposed that they go to the hotel and get unpacked first. Yooni agreed and nodded. As they walked, a troubling thought crossed Yooni's mind. She thought she saw Daeho's hand resting on Seol-hee's waist. The image unsettled her for a moment, but she quickly dismissed the idea, convincing herself that she must have seen it wrong. She reminded herself that there was no way anything inappropriate was going on between them. At the hotel, Yooni turned to Seol-hee and inquired if there were 2 rooms prepared for them. Seol-hee confirmed it, saying that she had booked 2 rooms so they could sleep comfortably and separately. Yooni expressed concern about the cost, pointing out that such an arrangement might raise the price unnecessarily. Seol-hee explained that now that Daeho had grown up, it would feel awkward for the 2 of them to share a room. Daeho stepped in and said that it would be fine, since Auntie June had raised him since he was young. Yooni agreed and said they were family, so sharing a room would be perfectly acceptable. Still, since the rooms had already been booked, she concluded that it couldn't be helped. Seol-hee added that there was no refund anyway and told her to feel free to use the room as she liked. As they headed to the rooms, Seol-hee pointed out which one Yooni would be using. Yooni thanked her sincerely. Seol-hee advised her to unpack and rest first, considering the long journey they had. She mentioned she would go downstairs to prepare coffee after showing Daeho his room. Inside his room, Daeho walked over to the window and admired the view. He thought aloud that the city looked amazing and that Seoul truly was a great place. Seol-hee told him the room had a beautiful view over the city and said she had selected it on purpose, glad to see he appreciated it. Daeho turned to her and expressed his gratitude, noting that even booking 2 rooms at such a high price was a big gesture. He said she was very kind and that he truly appreciated it. Seol-hee replied that for someone like Daeho, such efforts were nothing to her. Then Daeho suggested they should do some exercise there first, and then they start working out. In her hotel room, Auntie June quietly unpacked her belongings, carefully arranging each item as she placed them into the drawers. She looked at the pile of clothes she had brought and wondered if she might have packed too much, considering she wouldn't be staying for very long. Still, she reminded herself that this was a rare chance to visit the city and she wanted to look good while she was here. Her thoughts drifted to Daeho. She wondered if he was unpacking properly and what he might be doing alone in his room. After a while, Daeho stepped out and made his way toward the lobby. Looking around, he murmured to himself how amazing the hotel looked. It was nothing like the places in his own neighborhood. He marveled at how everything, from the design to the atmosphere, felt so foreign, almost as though he had traveled to a completely different country. He said it was the most extravagant place he had ever seen. Auntie June noticed his amazement and commented that it seemed he liked Seoul a lot. She then suggested that he consider moving to Seoul and starting a new life here now that he was grown up. Seol-hee joined the conversation, adding that his living in Seoul would be a big help to her as well, and asked if he didn't think so too. Daeho responded honestly, saying that while Seoul was certainly impressive, nothing compared to their hometown. He admitted that he felt suffocated without the scent of the ocean and concluded that he would rather visit Seoul occasionally instead of living there permanently. Seol-hee looked at him and remarked inwardly that the more she saw Daeho, the more innocent he appeared. Auntie June agreed, saying his innocence gave him a bright and youthful glow. She added that he still seemed like a child in many ways and sometimes that innocence made her worry. Seol-hee reassured her, pointing out that 20 years old was still young and that he simply needed more time to mature. Later, Seol-hee approached Daeho and said she would buy him more things. He hesitated, questioning whether it was really okay for her to do that for him. She insisted it was perfectly fine and said she just wanted to give him a present. At the shopping mall, Daeho continued to admire the city through the large windows. He said it was truly amazing to be able to see all of Seoul from such a height. The view, he noted, seemed to stretch endlessly, and for a brief moment he felt a strange ache, as if the beauty of it all stirred something deep within him. After shopping, all of them went to a coffee shop. They shared how much fun they had that day. Uni June expressed her gratitude, saying she was thankful for the invitation. Seol-hee responded with a smile, saying that seeing Daeho enjoying himself made her genuinely happy. Uni June also said that she had received a generous gift from Seol-hee and thanked her sincerely. Seol-hee replied that this was just the beginning and reminded everyone that not even a full day had passed yet. Then she suggested that everyone get some rest, acknowledging that they might be tired. She wondered aloud whether she had overdone things on the very first day. Auntie June immediately reassured her, saying it hadn't been too much at all and that she must be even more exhausted, being the only one who had to lead and guide them around. Daeho chimed in, thanking Seol-hee again and promising that he would wear the clothes she had bought for him. Seol-hee smiled and said she would see them all the next day, wished everyone good night, and then left. As she walked away, she reminded herself that she had promised to check in on Daeho later that night. She thought that with that assurance, Uni would sleep well. Still standing in the lobby, Auntie June turned to Daeho and asked if he was heading to his room, adding that she also needed to take a break. Daeho said okay and asked her to follow him in. She agreed, saying she was coming. Once inside the room, she commented softly that it felt so comfortable just being indoors and that there was absolutely no need to be concerned about other people. Meanwhile, in another part of the hotel, Daeho and Auntie June were doing a workout session together. After a while, the two of them went down to the dining area for breakfast. They sat together at the table, and Uni glanced at the plates in front of Daeho, surprised by how much food he had taken. She asked him about it, and he explained that he needed this much food if he wanted to have a good day. He pointed out that it wasn't like there were any limits, especially when staying at a hotel. Uni acknowledged that it made sense, since it was a breakfast buffet. Daeho added, with a casual tone, that he would need a lot of energy if he planned to handle both Uni and Seol-hee. Uni was startled by his words and asked why he was saying such a thing. Daeho told her not to worry and reassured her that he would treat both of them equally in the session. That particular word, equally, left Uni feeling unsettled. Once they had finished eating, the two of them took the elevator back up to their room. Inside the lift, Daeho leaned in close to her ear and murmured that he had eaten enough and now wanted to start exercising. He asked her what they should do next. Uni, aware of the people around them, told him not to speak like that in such a public place. She suggested they talk about it later. Daeho, however, remarked that she shouldn't have dressed the way she did, hinting that people nearby were already staring at them. Yooni grew flustered, wondering if those people had actually seen anything or if they had simply misunderstood the situation. After the other passengers left the elevator, Daeho turned to her and said that now that no one was around, it was fine to start working out right there. Yooni protested, insisting that they absolutely could not do such a thing. Daeho asked her if it really wasn't possible, hinting at scenes he had seen in movies. He mentioned that since the previous day, he had noticed the elevator was always quiet and mostly empty. Yooni tried to explain that it was far too risky. If anyone saw them, it would be a serious problem. But Daeho told her not to worry and promised he would handle everything. He urged her to go along with it. Yooni tried to stop him again, reminding him that the elevator doors would open soon, and then they start working out. The next day, after having breakfast again, Daeho commented that he had eaten a large amount once more. Yooni reassured him, saying that it would be digested in no time. The conversation shifted as Daeho mentioned that the hotel pool was supposed to be very nice and suggested that they go for a swim. Yooni was a little surprised to hear him talk about swimming, but she told him that she had packed a swimsuit just in case. He expressed his delight, saying it was amazing, and the two of them headed to the pool. As they arrived, Daeho remarked that he was glad they had come, noting that it would have been a waste to miss out on it. Yooni looked around and said she was relieved there was no one else in the pool. Daeho laughed and encouraged her to hurry. Yooni sat on the edge of the pool, dipping her feet into the water, and remarked that it felt nice and quiet, and that she was feeling really good. Daeho reminded her that Seolhee would also be joining them at the pool, and said she should be arriving soon. Yooni noted that it was their last day at the hotel, and they would have to return home the next day. Daeho agreed and said that they should make the most of the day and have a lot of fun. Yooni commented on how refreshing it was to see him always full of energy. Then she suddenly jumped into the pool and began swimming, remarking that it had been a while since she had last swum and expressing relief that the water wasn't salty like the sea. Without warning, Daeho appeared in the pool and pulled her close. He told her that he wanted to exercise there and added that she should work out in the water as well, mentioning that her body looked great. And then they start working out. He responded that he couldn't hold himself back from working out in the pool, assuring her that they had nothing to worry about since they were alone. As he continued exercising, he commented that although working out at the beach was enjoyable, the hotel pool offered a different kind of experience. Just then, Seolhee entered the pool area and saw both of them working out. She immediately questioned what they were doing, expressing her frustration that things always seemed to happen whenever she wasn't around. She wondered aloud whether they were doing it intentionally. Daeho noticed her and told her to get in the water if she was done with her warm-up. Seolhee responded affirmatively, calling him master, and said she was coming. Daeho remarked that both women looked great that day. Soon after, all three of them began working out together in the pool. At that moment, as they all realized that they would be returning home the next day, a sense of longing filled the air. Yooni admitted that she had felt incredibly happy during the trip, almost as if she had been living in a dream. Daeho reassured her, saying not to worry, because there would be many more joyful moments waiting for them back home from now on. Yooni shared her wish to continue exercising once they were back home, but she added that it might be difficult because there would be other people around, making it hard to do it properly. Daeho told her that she had changed quite a bit during the trip and encouraged her to just follow his lead once they returned. He promised that it would be a fun adventure. She was caught off guard and asked him what kind of adventure he meant. He simply replied that they should enjoy it together now and in the future. The next day, Daeho and Yooni returned to the house. As Daeho stepped inside, he greeted everyone warmly, saying it was good to see them all again. Mia was standing nearby, clearly in a sour mood, and she remarked that she didn't know why, but it felt as though he had been gone for a very long time. Daeho glanced in her direction. Suo was also present and commented that the house had been peaceful and quiet, but now that peace was surely over. Aunt June asked her daughter if their father had eaten yet, saying she should go prepare dinner. Mia quickly told her mother not to worry about it, suggesting that since she had just returned from the trip, she should take a rest, and they would simply order something later. Aunt June looked at Mia and asked if she had been eating takeout the entire time while she was away. Mia laughed at the question, Later that night, Mia quietly sneaked into Daeho's room while he was fast asleep. She whispered his name, trying to wake him. He opened his eyes, groggy, and asked what she was doing there. She responded confidently, telling him that she had come for the workout session and hoped he was ready, because he would now have to satisfy her and make her happy using his exercise techniques. He asked Mia what she meant, saying he didn't understand her intentions. Mia, frustrated, confessed that he had been avoiding her for far too long, even going so far as to take a trip to the city without her. She admitted that she could no longer hold back her feelings and declared that she wanted to do the workout right then and there, having waited for him for so long. In response, he reminded her that he had already made himself clear the last time they wouldn't do anything until she reconciled with Sua. Anger flared in Mia's eyes as she snapped that she understood. She added that it was fine he could do the workout with Sua as well. She insisted that she didn't care what the two of them did behind her back, but in exchange, he must continue doing the workout with her too. Daeho refused, saying that wasn't good enough. From now on, he said he wanted to do the exercise with both of them together. Mia raised her voice, incredulous, and asked if he was being serious. He replied that he had made up his mind and wasn't going to change it. He then told her to go back, leaving her standing there, visibly upset, frustrated, and angry. The next morning, Sua came downstairs fully dressed, clearly prepared to go out. Daeho, sitting in the lounge, asked her where she was heading. She replied that she was going to a cafe to read a book. He commented that it was hot outside and asked whether it wouldn't be better to read at home instead. Sua snapped at him, telling him to shut up, and questioned when he had ever started caring about her. Just then, Gobong arrived at Daeho's house to meet him. Daeho said he wanted to tell Gobong about the city trip, explaining that although it had felt a little scary at first, it became enjoyable once he got used to the place. Gobong admitted that he didn't think he could go to the city himself, as he was too scared to ride the train. Yuhi also came along with Gobong to visit Daeho and excitedly mentioned that she had really wanted to see the city as well. Daeho asked Yuhi how she had been. With a smile, Yuhi replied that everything was fine and that even though it was still summer, it felt like she hadn't seen him in a year. Daeho laughed and told her it hadn't been that long, and surely it just felt that way. Meanwhile, Sua was walking across the street toward the cafe, a book tucked under her arm. As she walked, she couldn't shake the stress that clung to her, realizing that despite her attempt to focus on reading, her mind was too overwhelmed. She thought that even though she had left the house for peace, it might actually be worse than being at home. Her thoughts drifted back to the moment she had stepped outside earlier and had seen Gobong and his sister, Yuhi, chatting with Daeho. From afar, it looked like the three of them were enjoying themselves, smiling and talking. Sua, spotting Yuhi, questioned internally who the girl was. Upon closer glance, she recognized her as Gobong's sister. Still, jealousy gnawed at her. She wondered bitterly if Daeho was now spending his time with yet another girl. The sight of their cheerful faces agitated her further, and she felt an overwhelming wave of frustration. It seemed so unfair that they all appeared so happy while she carried so much emotional weight. With these thoughts in mind, she continued toward the cafe, silently worrying whether Daeho might even do workouts with his friend's sister. Back at home, Yuhi and Daeho had started their workout session. Yuhi mentioned that she was worried about Gobong. Daeho reminded her that she had sent Gobong home earlier. The next day, on a sunny beach, Yuri stood waiting and glanced around, wiping sweat from her brow. She muttered to herself that it was quite hot and wondered where Daeho was. She recalled that he had called her, asking her to come to the beach and specifically told her to wear a bikini. Confused, she questioned what exactly was going on. Suddenly, Daeho appeared, calling out that he was over there. As he approached, Yuri asked him what this was all about, and said he should have told her earlier if he had wanted to spend the day playing at the beach. Daeho smiled and explained that the weather was too good to miss, and he had felt like coming to the beach with her. Then, turning slightly, he added that he hadn't come alone. He pointed out that he had brought Gobong and Yuhi along with him. Gobong lit up at the sight of Yuri and greeted her cheerfully. Yuri laughed and said it had been a while, asking if Gobong had gained weight. Gobong chuckled and asked if he really looked fatter. Yuri then turned to Yuhi and greeted her as well, asking if she was Gobong's pretty sister. With a teasing smile, Yuri added that Yuhi was the one who had spent a lot of fun time with Daeho before. Yuhi seemed embarrassed and laughed it off, saying she was surprised Yuri still remembered that. Daeho, noticing that everyone had gathered, clapped his hands and suggested that they all have some fun. They began playing volleyball together on the beach. At one point, Gobong missed a shot, prompting Daeho to tease him, saying he had lost and now had to go get drinks from the store. Gobong whined that it was unfair and asked Daeho why he looked so pleased with himself. Still, he turned and started heading toward the store. Shortly afterward, Yuhi told the group she needed to take care of something privately and excused herself. Daeho turned to Yuri and remarked that it was now just the two of them. Yuri seemed surprised and asked if they were really the only ones left. Daeho nodded and suggested they use the opportunity to do a workout together. Yuri hesitated and expressed discomfort, saying there were too many people around and she felt embarrassed. Daeho reassured her, saying there was no need to worry, and then they start working out. He pointed towards a more secluded area in the distance and told her that it was right over there. Without wasting any time, they began heading in that direction. Meanwhile, Gobong had been wandering off in search of the store to buy drinks, as he had been asked. He finally reached a location and looked around, muttering to himself that this was the place Daeho had mentioned, but he couldn't find any store nearby. The area felt unusually far from the beach, and he wondered if he had been sent in the wrong direction. On the other side, Daeho and Yuri arrived at the quiet spot. It was secluded and peaceful, surrounded by tall rocks and soft sand. Daeho gestured around proudly, saying that it was truly quiet and no one else was there. He added that it was a secret spot known only to him and that they shouldn't waste any more time. They should enjoy themselves and have fun exercising together, especially since it had been a while since the last time. Yuri agreed, smiling as she replied that having just the two of them for a workout session without Mia was indeed a great experience. They began their workout, surrounded by the sound of waves and distant seagulls, their sweat glistening under the sun. Unbeknownst to them, Yuhi was hiding behind one of the rocks nearby, secretly observing them. From her hiding place, she watched Daeho and Yuri working out together on top of the sand, both of them soaked in sweat. The sight stirred complicated feelings inside her. She thought to herself that Yuri seemed to be enjoying the workout far too much. A sudden wave of guilt washed over Yuhi as she realized she was invading their privacy. She told herself that she shouldn't be watching them, and that it wasn't right to intrude on a moment that clearly belonged only to the two of them. Gobong returned to the beach carrying the drinks he had managed to buy, muttering under his breath about how hard it had been to find them. He was frustrated that the convenience store had been located so far from the beach. As he placed the drinks on the counter, he greeted the cashier politely and asked to purchase the items. While the girl at the counter began scanning them, he stood there thinking that the others were probably waiting for him, wondering why he was taking so long. Back at the beach, Gobong had returned and was drenched in sweat after the long walk. As he arrived, his attention was caught by a girl sitting alone on the sand, crying. He stared at her for a moment, puzzled and concerned, wondering what could have happened to make her so upset. Unable to ignore her, he approached and gently greeted her, asking what she was doing there. The girl turned toward him and asked sharply who he was. Gobong was momentarily stunned by her appearance, finding her incredibly cute. He quickly introduced himself, explaining that his name was Gobong, and that his grandfather had given him that name to mean a big man like a mountain. The girl, still wary, asked him what he wanted. Gobong assured her that he didn't want anything. He had just seen her crying and felt concerned. He told her not to be scared, that he hadn't meant to intrude but only wanted to help. Then he offered her a drink from the bag, telling her it was cold and refreshing, and he had just bought it. She accepted the drink with a small nod of gratitude and mentioned that it happened to be her favorite. Curious, Gobong gently asked if she had lost something and if she had been looking in the sand for it. She replied that she had lost a ring her grandmother had given her, a treasured keepsake. Gobong immediately related, telling her that he too had something precious, once a watch his grandmother had given him. He admitted that the kids at school had mocked him for it, calling it cheap, but he hadn't cared because it was a gift from his grandmother and meant everything to him. He had worn it every day until it finally stopped working. As he spoke, he sat down in the sand beside her and began sifting through it, helping her look for the ring. The girl watched him quietly, touched by his sincerity and warmth. Elsewhere, during their private exercise session, Daeho turned to Yuri and mentioned that there was someone he wanted her to meet. She looked at him, confused, and asked what he was talking about. Before she could press further, he suddenly shouted for Yuhi to come over. Yuri's eyes widened in surprise. Daeho insisted that she come closer and take a proper look at their workout session. Yuri, visibly shocked, asked what he was doing. At that moment, Yuhi emerged hesitantly from behind the rocks, clearly embarrassed. Daeho gestured toward her and explained that Yuhi had wanted to see him exercise, and that was why he had told her to secretly hide and watch them. Yuri looked at him, visibly flustered, and told him that he should have asked her permission first. Now she felt utterly humiliated and ashamed. She said the entire situation was painfully awkward. Yuhi sat down nearby and quietly said, "Excuse me," unsure of what to say or how to ease the tension. Suddenly, Gobong discovered the ring buried in the sand and, with excitement, informed Sohyun that he had found it. He reminded her that he had promised to retrieve it and was relieved to have kept his word. Sohyun, deeply grateful, expressed her heartfelt thanks, explaining that losing the ring would have been a tremendous personal loss. As he handed the ring back to her, Gobong gently advised her to be more careful with it in the future. Overwhelmed with emotion, she began to cry once more and sincerely thanked him again, admitting that without his help, she might never have recovered such a precious item. Gobong responded warmly, saying he was truly glad to have met her, marveling at the coincidence that they were of the same age, which he found quite cool. Feeling a bit guilty for having delayed him, Sohyun apologized and asked whether he had come to the beach with his friends, expressing concern for keeping him away from them for too long. Gobong reassured her, saying it was perfectly fine and that he would return to them now. Then, turning to her, he invited Sohyun to come along, explaining that he wanted to introduce her to his friends. She hesitated briefly and asked if it would really be okay for her to come. Gobong responded with enthusiasm, saying that his friend Daeho was the greatest friend anyone could have. Meanwhile, Yuhi continued observing Daeho and Yuri as they exercised on the beach, reflecting to herself that it looked quite strange to see people doing a workout in such a public setting. Yuri, on the other hand, commented that she probably would never forget the experience of exercising on the beach. Elsewhere, Gobong and Sohyun were walking side by side along the shore, heading toward the group. Upon seeing them, Daeho greeted Gobong and remarked that he had taken quite a long time to return. Gobong seemed surprised by the comment and asked if he had really been that late, then handed out the cool drinks he had brought for everyone. Daeho cheerfully told him that he had arrived at just the right moment, and soon everyone began enjoying the refreshments. However, as Yuri took a sip, she immediately gagged and exclaimed that the drink had gone flat and made her feel like vomiting. She pointed out that the drinks were no longer cold. Gobong laughed awkwardly and apologized, explaining that he had met someone along the way, and then introduced Sohyun as a new friend he had made that day on the beach. Sohyun greeted everyone politely, introducing herself with a smile. Daeho teasingly asked Gobong if she was really his friend, calling him Little Gobong. Gobong confirmed proudly that they were the same age and had decided to be friends, adding that Sohyun was a really kind person. Yuri, visibly surprised, remarked that it was quite unexpected no one would have guessed that Gobong would bring a girl with him. Curious, Daeho asked how they had become friends, and Gobong explained that he had told Sohyun a lot about Daeho. Daeho smiled and said they were all friends now and should get along well, then extended a warm welcome to Sohyun. He introduced himself properly, stating that he was 20 years old and genuinely pleased to meet her. Sohyun responded politely. Yuri, feeling playful, declared that the moment was historic and suggested they celebrate with a party. When Daeho asked her what she meant by historic, she explained that it referred to a significant event, to which he nodded in agreement. Yuhi turned to her brother, Gobong, and commented that she hadn't realized he had it in him to befriend someone like Sohyun so easily. Daeho then suggested getting some ice cream, to which Yuri reminded him that they had just eaten some earlier. Daeho then offered another idea: spicy food. Afterward, the entire group went to a nearby restaurant to enjoy some spicy dishes. While there, Gobong mentioned that he hadn't expected Yuri and Yuhi to leave so suddenly. Daeho expressed his disappointment as well, saying he hadn't realized they didn't enjoy spicy food. Turning to Sohyun, he added that he was really glad she had stayed. Sohyun responded kindly, saying that since it was a party and she had been invited by Gobong, it was perfectly fine and, in fact, she enjoyed spicy food. Daeho, smiling, reiterated how happy he was that she was there. And with that, the three of them began eating together. After finishing their meal, Daeho expressed how delicious the food had been and thanked Gobong for it. Gobong cheerfully responded that he would gladly buy it for Daeho anytime he wanted. Sohyun then mentioned that she had enjoyed spending time with them that day but felt it was time for her to head home. Gobong pointed out that her house wasn't far from his and that they lived in the same direction, offering to walk her home. Sohyun appreciated the offer but gently declined, saying it was fine. Daeho interjected and offered to walk her home as well, suggesting that it would be better if the three of them went together. However, Gobong reminded Daeho that his house was in the opposite direction and that walking Sohyun home might make it harder for him to return. Despite that, Daeho insisted it wouldn't be a problem and that he was okay with it. Gobong then suggested they leave, noting that it was going to get dark soon. As they prepared to part ways, Sohyun wished Daeho a safe journey and told him that it had been really nice meeting him. Daeho returned the sentiment and told her to get home safely, saying he hoped to see her again next time. As Gobong and Sohyun walked together toward her home, Gobong asked her what foods she liked besides stir-fried rice cakes. Sohyun replied that she also enjoyed chicken feet. Gobong smiled and said he liked them too, suggesting they go eat chicken feet together sometime. Sohyun agreed, saying it sounded like a good idea. Meanwhile, Daeho stood behind, listening to their conversation and watching them walk away together. After that, Daeho also made his way home. As soon as he stepped inside, he saw Aunt June in the kitchen, cooking something while muttering to herself that the roasted dried fish was finally enough. He called out that he was home. Startled, Aunt June turned and asked who it was. Then, recognizing his voice, scolded him playfully for scaring her. She asked if he had already eaten dinner. Daeho replied that he had eaten but was still a bit hungry. He then asked if she could do him a favor. Aunt June, however, told him she had to leave because Uncle wanted to drink some beer, adding that at least it was better when he was around. As she left, Daeho stood there, feeling a creeping sense of loneliness, thinking to himself that it felt as if he was being abandoned. He went into his room, lay down on his bed, and began watching something on his phone. As he looked at the screen, he noted that there was no reply from Gobong and wondered if he was still with Sohyun. A sense of frustration washed over him as he thought about how well those two seemed to get along. Wondering why they looked so good together, it was something he just couldn't understand. Suddenly, his bedroom door swung open, and Mia walked in. She immediately confronted him, saying that she had heard from Yuri that he had gone to the beach that day. Daeho confirmed it and asked what was wrong with that. Mia accused him of becoming increasingly rude, saying she had been home too and that he could have invited her. She pointed out that he had even exercised with Yuri at the beach, questioning how he could do that after telling Mia he didn't want to work out with her. Daeho defended himself, complaining that Yuri didn't know how to keep things to herself and that he'd have to warn her to stay quiet next time. Mia reminded him that he had once said he didn't want to exercise with her, only to turn around and do it with someone else. She questioned how he could refuse her and yet agree to work out with another person. In response, Daeho stated firmly that he had made up his mind he wouldn't work out with her unless he could do it with both her and Sua together. Mia sat down, looking thoughtful, and reflected on how stubborn Daeho had become. It seemed to her that there was no changing his mind. She also began to consider that even if she agreed to his condition, Sua might not accept it. That would mean nothing would change regardless of her own decision. With Sua's difficult personality, Mia believed there was little chance Sua would go along with the idea. Frustrated, she concluded that even if she allowed it, it would all be pointless if Sua refused. Then, surprising even herself, she told him that they could do things his way. Daeho, stunned, asked if she was serious, if she really was giving him permission to work out with both her and Sua. He smiled and reminded her that he had already allowed her to do what she wanted. So now it was time for her to join him for a workout first. He asked if that was acceptable to her. Mia agreed and added that after their session, they would work out together with Sua next time. Daeho nodded and said that in that case, they should start working out right away. Daeho asked Mia if she had been waiting for a long time. Mia admitted that she had. Daeho, seemingly unaware of her doubts, enthusiastically said that he wanted to go and tell Sua about it immediately. Meanwhile, in a dark room elsewhere, Sua sat in front of her computer, trying to focus on her writing. However, she found herself unable to concentrate, and she suspected it was because she had seen Daeho looking so cheerful earlier that day. Her thoughts drifted, and she began to wonder if something was happening between Daeho and that girl Yuhi. To Sua, Yuhi seemed quite annoying, and the idea unsettled her. Suddenly, she heard an unexpected sound, which startled her. She quickly asked herself what the noise could be. Just then, the door opened, and to her shock, Daeho entered the room. He casually asked her what she was doing. Sua immediately began shouting at him, reminding him that he had once said he wouldn't work out with anyone. Daeho tried to calm her down, telling her that he had good news to share. He explained that Mia had agreed to let the three of them work out together. Sua, clearly taken aback, asked him what he had just said. He confirmed it again, saying that everyone could be happy if only she agreed as well. He then asked her what her thoughts were about the arrangement. Sua stood there, surprised, her mind beginning to race as she quietly pondered the situation. Daeho asked Sua to hurry up and give him her answer. Sua turned to Mia in disbelief and questioned whether she had lost her mind, asking if she had truly agreed to the arrangement Daeho had just mentioned. She demanded to know whether what he said was true. Mia mumbled hesitantly, confirming that she had, more or less, agreed to it. Daeho jumped in, reminding Mia that she had indeed told him she was fine with the conditions. He pressed her again, asking for confirmation. Mia nodded and quietly reiterated that she had agreed. However, Sua firmly declared that she couldn't accept it. She said she could never agree to such a situation, she simply wouldn't do it. She refused outright, repeating that it wasn't something she could tolerate and that she would not exercise with the both of them. Daeho, taken aback, asked what she meant by that. Mia, watching the exchange, thought to herself that her instincts had been correct. There truly was no way Sua would ever accept this. Daeho, visibly frustrated, asked how Sua could reject it. He pointed out that even Mia had agreed, so what was Sua's issue? Sua replied coldly that she didn't care what Mia had decided, she would not agree to his condition, and therefore, he should stick to his own word as well. Then, she turned to Mia and accused her of being the worst. Daeho stood there, confused and disheartened, admitting to himself that he hadn't expected things to turn out this way. The next day, Daeho called Gobong. He told him that the weather was great and that he wanted to go out and fly drones together, asking if Gobong wanted to come over. Gobong replied apologetically, saying he was busy at the moment and didn't think he could make it. He added that he wasn't even at home. He was currently at a cafe with Sohyun. Upon hearing this, Daeho's expression darkened, and he asked Gobong where exactly he was and whether he could come there. Gobong quickly declined, explaining that he was taking Sohyun somewhere else afterward and that they could meet another time. Daeho stared in disbelief at his phone after the call ended, feeling stunned that Gobong had just hung up on him. He thought to himself how much Gobong had changed. Meanwhile, Gobong was sitting at a restaurant with Sohyun. He told her that they should go have some chicken later. He casually mentioned that Daeho had called, but that he didn't think Daeho would be able to join them that day. Sohyun reassured him, saying it was okay, and offered to treat him since he had paid for their snacks last time. Back in his room, Daeho sat looking visibly disgruntled and angry. He wondered bitterly how Gobong could choose a girl over a longtime friend. Frustrated, he suddenly slammed his phone onto the ground, muttering that it was all so annoying and wondering who he could take it out on now. He stood up and left his room, remembering that Mia had mentioned going out shopping. Mr. Cha was at work, and he guessed that Aunt June might be home alone. He made his way to the kitchen, only to be surprised that she wasn't there either. He concluded she must be in her bedroom. Just as he turned toward the hallway, Aunt June appeared, heading toward her room. She greeted him, saying she was glad to see him. He quickly asked if she could hang out with him for a bit, but June apologized, saying they could talk later. She had to go out and get groceries. Daeho tried to stop her, saying he just wanted to work out with her. but she didn't hear him clearly and mentioned that the fridge was completely empty before saying she'd be back soon. With that, she left the house, apologizing again on her way out. Daeho stood in silence. Thinking that something was seriously off, he felt like everyone was leaving him behind. He returned to his room, stewing in his thoughts, blaming Sua for everything. He believed things had spiraled out of control simply because she didn't agree to his plan. Overcome by emotion, he stormed out of his room and went straight to Sua's room. She was fast asleep, exhausted after working through the night on her writing. Daeho glared at her, thinking how dare she refuse his plan. If only she had said yes, everyone could have been happy. But now what he called his revenge had been awakened. He quietly stepped closer and began exercising beside her bed, assuming the noise and motion would wake her up. However, Sua remained asleep. Determined not to let her rest, he decided that this time, he would succeed in waking her. Just then, a knock sounded at the door. Sua, startled by the noise, woke up and asked who was there. Daeho replied that it was him. She got angry upon seeing him standing there and immediately demanded to know what he was doing. Daeho began working out beside Sua, causing her to scream in frustration. Meanwhile, Mia was lying on her bed, scrolling through memes on her phone. Suddenly, there was a knock at the door. Daeho's voice followed, announcing that he was coming in. Mia, slightly annoyed, asked what his problem was this time. Daeho, in a cheerful tone, told her that he actually had good news. He then revealed that just as Mia had wanted, the three of them would now be working out together. Mia looked at him in disbelief, pointing out that Sua would never agree to such a thing. But Daeho shook his head and told her that Sua had, in fact, agreed. At that moment, Sua entered Mia's room as well. Mia was visibly shocked to see her there. She turned to Sua and asked if she had really said that to Daeho. Sua replied calmly that yes, she had agreed to it and she would do whatever the two of them wanted. Mia stared at her, deep in thought. A quiet worry began to form in her mind. She had a sinking feeling that this arrangement of the three of them working out together might eventually lead to trouble. Daeho expressed his excitement and joy, saying it was a great idea that Sua had finally made up her mind and was ready to work out. Mia, however, turned to Sua and asked what was wrong with her. Clearly taken aback, she questioned how Sua could have agreed to something so unexpected. Daeho, surprised by Mia's reaction, asked her what was wrong. He had thought she would be happy about it. But Mia admitted, her voice low with concern, that she was actually more worried than anything else. The fact that Sua had accepted the idea made her feel uneasy. She confessed that she had never imagined Sua would give in to such a suggestion. Daeho calmly reminded them that this showed Sua still cared deeply about the bond between them. He believed this was the only way the three of them could live in peace and harmony. Sua then gently clarified that while she had agreed to the idea, she had also made it clear that she didn't want to rush things. She wanted to move forward at her own pace, one step at a time. Mia nodded slowly, acknowledging Sua's feelings. She said she understood this was indeed what Sua wanted, but added that neither of them felt completely ready. She suggested they think carefully about how to start working out together without overwhelming one another. Daeho agreed with the need to take it slowly and gradually. Wanting to ease the tension, he proposed that Sua could begin by simply watching him and Mia work out together. He thought this would make the situation less awkward and give Sua a chance to adjust. Mia was surprised by this arrangement and asked if she would really be the one to start first. When Daeho confirmed, she gave a hesitant nod and said she'd try. Soon after, Daeho and Mia began their workout while Sua sat silently nearby, watching them. As the routine progressed, Mia couldn't help but notice how intensely Sua was observing. She turned to Daeho and asked whether Sua really needed to watch them so closely. Daeho reassured her that it was important. The next morning, Aunt June was calling out to everyone in the house, asking them to come downstairs because breakfast was ready. Sua stepped out of her room and began walking down the stairs. As she did, Mia appeared from the hallway and met her on the way, staring at her for a moment. Mia then suggested that they go have breakfast together. Sua agreed, responding that they should go and eat. Just then, Daeho joined them and greeted them with a cheerful good morning. Both girls turned around in surprise and asked what he was doing there. Daeho reminded them that they had agreed to treat each other nicely from that point forward. He added that he was planning to do a workout session right then and encouraged both of them to join him. Sua asked what exactly he was trying to do at that hour. He simply told them to follow his lead as he demonstrated the exercises. Suddenly, Aunt June came upstairs and asked what they were all doing up there, urging them to come down because the breakfast was getting cold. She sounded frustrated as she mentioned that she had been calling them repeatedly. Mia turned to Daeho and asked him to please finish the workout quickly because her mother was calling them downstairs. Meanwhile, Daeho's thoughts wandered as he recalled that Uni had avoided him the day before. He silently concluded that she would have to be punished for that. After breakfast, once everyone had finished eating, Aunt June went into the kitchen to wash the dishes. Daeho approached her quietly from behind, startling her. Without hesitation, he told her that he wanted to have a workout session with her right there. Uni, slightly confused, reminded him that both Mia and Sua were in their rooms at the moment. Daeho reassured her that he was aware of that. He instructed her to wait until that night when her husband would be asleep, and then send him a message so they could have a workout session together. Uni expressed concern, pointing out that her husband would be present in the house, and that it didn't seem possible to do a workout session without him noticing. Daeho dismissed her worries, urging her to do as he said, and reminded her that she had once promised to always follow his orders. He insisted that it was time for her to uphold that promise. Reluctantly, she agreed, saying that she would follow his instructions. Later that night, while Daeho was sitting in his room, he suddenly received a message from Uni. It was the signal that she was ready for the workout session. He immediately made his way to Uni's room. Upon seeing him, she looked surprised and asked why he was planning to do a workout at that hour. He replied that he didn't have much time to explain and that he simply wanted to exercise with her, even though he understood it was risky. Uncle Yonggu was sleeping soundly on one side of the bed, undisturbed and unaware of anything happening around him. Daeho found it unbelievable that he hadn't stirred at all, thinking to himself how crazy it was that the man could sleep through everything. Turning to Uni, Daeho reassured her that she shouldn't be concerned about her husband, explaining that he wasn't a sensitive person and likely wouldn't wake up during their workout session. Both Daeho and Uni began their workout session in a hurried manner. In the next moment, Mr. Cha rose from the bed, looking puzzled as he tried to understand why he had awakened so abruptly. Uni, trying to mask her anxiety, responded with confusion, pretending not to know what had happened. Mr. Cha mentioned that while he was asleep, he thought he had heard a strange noise, something that sounded like vibrations resonating around the room. Uni quickly dismissed his concern, telling him he must have had a strange dream and questioned why such a noise would even exist in their bedroom. She gently urged him to return to sleep, reminding him that there were still a few hours left until morning. He nodded, apologized for waking her up as well, and told her she should get some rest too. Meanwhile, Daeho remained hidden under the blanket, trying to stay silent. Uni leaned in close and quietly told him to wait until her husband fell completely asleep, and then they could continue their workout later. Daeho agreed, saying he would stay just like that for a while. The next morning, Uni was in the kitchen, preparing breakfast while reflecting on the events of the previous night. She felt worn out and exhausted, recalling how the workout session with Daeho had drained her energy. The close call with her husband nearly discovering them had left her uneasy. As she was lost in thought, she suddenly heard a voice from behind. Turning around, she saw Daeho standing there. He looked restless and told her that he was once again feeling the urge to exercise. Uni hesitated and reminded him that they couldn't do it right now. She questioned whether he had really come downstairs like that, warning him that someone might catch him in the middle of a workout session. Daeho reassured her, explaining that no one usually came to the kitchen before breakfast, and added that if they didn't take care of the session now, it could create even bigger problems in the future. Uni stood there, thinking deeply. She realized that he might be right. If she didn't help him now, things could indeed escalate or become more difficult later. She made up her mind and told him she would help him settle down and agreed to proceed with the session. However, she reminded him that they had to hurry. Daeho accepted and teased her, saying it seemed like she was more eager than he was to do the workout. He added that he had no choice but to exercise with her so early in the morning. Yoonhee admitted that even though it wasn't safe to do a workout in the kitchen, there seemed to be no other option. Mia was coming downstairs, holding her phone in her hand, and began heading toward the kitchen. As she approached, both Daeho and Auntie June noticed her arrival. Daeho asked her why she was in the kitchen so early in the morning. Mia replied that she had come to get some water, then questioned him in return, wondering what he was doing there. Daeho casually responded that he was thirsty too. Mia looked around and commented that the kitchen felt strangely warm, with the air moist and sticky. Auntie June let out a soft laugh and explained that it was because she was cooking. Mia walked closer to her mother and remarked that it was odd she noticed a familiar, slightly unpleasant smell lingering around her. Daeho suddenly panicked while drinking his water and nervously questioned what Mia was implying. Auntie June, a bit surprised, asked if Mia was saying she smelled bad. Mia pointed out that her mother was the mother of grown-up girls and, for heaven's sake, a married woman should carry herself like one. Then, without hesitation, she grabbed the water bottle from Daeho's hand and started gulping it down. Auntie June felt uneasy, thinking how dangerously close Mia had come to discovering them mid-exercise. Just then, Mia announced that Yuri would be visiting that day. She cheerfully added that there would be beer, plenty of food, and a proper celebration. Sua, overhearing this, asked sarcastically if Mia was planning another workout session with Daeho. Mia confirmed it without hesitation, stating that it would be the same type of workout they had done together before. Sua responded with clear irritation, saying she would rather go to a friend's place or an internet cafe than stick around during another one of those so-called sessions. Mia, unfazed, told her to do as she pleased, that she didn't need Sua's permission and was merely giving her a heads up. Sua, now angry, accused Mia of bringing it up just to drag her into that mess again. Mia denied it, saying she didn't expect anything from her, and reassured her that the situation had only come about because both of them had already shared a similar workout session with Daeho in the past. Sua, with a touch of bitterness, remarked that Daeho would probably have plenty of fun tonight during the workout. Later on, Yuri arrived at the house and began greeting everyone warmly. Daeho welcomed her, saying it was a pleasant surprise to see everyone gathered like that. Yuri explained that she had suggested the idea of a small party to celebrate their workout sessions and thought it was the perfect occasion. Gobong and Sohyun had come along with her. Gobong admitted he hadn't expected Yuri to call him, but Yuri replied that she genuinely wanted to congratulate him. Yuri proudly stated that Gobong had finally gotten a girlfriend and insisted it was a milestone worth celebrating. Sohyun quickly clarified that she wasn't his girlfriend yet, but Mia interjected, saying whether girlfriend or not, it was still something to celebrate, especially since it was the first time Gobong had a friend besides Daeho. She urged everyone to head upstairs, mentioning how much fun they were going to have and how long it had been since she last enjoyed a beer. Soon, all of them were gathered, drinking and enjoying the party. Yuri laughed and commented on how funny Gobong was. Daeho agreed, saying it was nice that someone else finally recognized what a great person Gobong was. Gobong confessed that he had probably gained confidence because everyone had been so kind to him. He admitted that there was a time when just seeing the shadow of a girl would make him faint. Sohyun chimed in, saying she believed Gobong was truly a great person, especially to have such good friends around him. Daeho expressed his gratitude that Sohyun had become friends with Gobong and suggested they all hang out more often. Yuri stood up with a flourish and reminded everyone that she was the one who had brought Gobong, and because of her, they were all having such a great time. She added that everyone should be thankful to her, then excused herself to use the bathroom. Once there, she muttered to herself that needing the bathroom was the only downside to drinking beer. As she was in the bathroom, Daeho came outside and told her he wanted to do a workout there. Yuri expressed her concern, pointing out that there were too many people around. Daeho argued that Sua was at home, and everyone else already knew Yuri was using the bathroom while he was standing outside. He assured her that no one would come by to check and that they could have some uninterrupted time together for their workout. And then they start working out. In the adjacent room, Mia continued drinking and mentioned how surprising it was that Gobong now had a female friend, adding that even Daeho hadn't had one yet. Sohyun seemed surprised, admitting that she thought Daeho would have many female friends given how lively and outgoing he was. Gobong guessed that perhaps it was because Daeho was always close with his sisters, which might have kept him from forming relationships with other girls. Mia laughed and commented that Daeho had always been like that, especially since he spent so much time hanging out with Gobong. A moment later, Sohyun stood up and said she had drunk too much and needed to use the bathroom. She asked if Yuri had come back yet. Mia, realizing something was off, offered to take Sohyun downstairs to the other bathroom. When Gobong offered to join them, Mia quickly stopped him, questioning why he would follow girls to the bathroom. Embarrassed, Gobong apologized, admitted she was right, and laughed it off, saying that men and women should stay separate. As Mia and Sohyun headed downstairs, Mia pointed toward the bathroom and told Sohyun to make herself comfortable. Sohyun thanked her politely and asked to be left alone. Just then, Yoonijun stepped out of her room and asked who the girl was. Sohyun introduced herself, saying her name politely. Mia explained that she was a friend of Gobong, someone who had come to enjoy the day with them. Yooni smiled and commented on how pretty Sohyun looked, admitting she hadn't expected Gobong to bring such a charming friend. Stepping closer, she encouraged Sohyun to get along with Daeho too, since the boys were close friends. Sohyun responded sincerely, saying that Daeho seemed like a good person and that she would be happy to know him better. At that moment, Sohyun had no idea how this seemingly casual encounter with Yoonijun would impact her future, or what emotional entanglements awaited them in that house. Upstairs, Mia began piecing things together. There was only one bathroom on the second floor, and the fact that both Daeho and Yuri were missing pointed to only one explanation. She headed to the downstairs bathroom and, upon opening the door, found both of them inside. Her tone was stern as she confronted them, questioning what they were thinking. She reminded them that the house was full of people and asked whether they truly intended to act like this with guests such as Gobong and Sohyun present. Yuri responded with frustration, saying she had no control over the situation and that Mia should have educated her brother better. Mia's anger simmered at the suggestion. In her mind, she wondered how Yuri could accuse her of not guiding her own brother and felt deeply offended, thinking how dare someone try to corrupt him like this. At that moment, Sohyun arrived behind Mia. Her eyes widened in disbelief as she stood frozen. She had never witnessed anything like this before. In her thoughts, she admitted to herself that this was the first time she had seen anyone doing an exercise like that, and she was shocked beyond words. Gobong sat in the next room, sipping his drink, and slowly drifted into thoughts of a few days earlier. He recalled being in his room, focused on something, when his sister Yuhee had suddenly barged in. She had asked him if he still wanted to play the game she had bought for him, reminding him she had purchased it because he seemed so eager about it. Then she had noticed him writing something and questioned what he was doing. He had reluctantly admitted that he was writing a love letter. Without hesitation, she had asked if he was planning to confess to Sohyun. He had shouted at her, frustrated that she hadn't even bothered to knock before entering. And then, to make matters worse, she had commented on how bad his handwriting was. The memory still embarrassed him, especially the fact that his sister had discovered something so private. Back in the present, now quite drunk, he stared blankly and thought about how he only needed the right moment to tell Sohyun how he felt. He imagined them officially becoming a couple, surrounded by congratulations from everyone. In his daydream, he saw the two of them going to theme parks together, perhaps even visiting the city to enjoy a famous musical. Another scene played in his mind where they watched a romantic movie together in the cinema on a snowy Christmas evening. But then reality pulled him back, and he noticed he was alone in the room. He wondered why everyone else was still missing and assumed they were probably still in the bathroom. Meanwhile, outside the bathroom, Yuri whispered in alarm that Sohyun had seen them. Daeho froze in shock at the sight of her. Sohyun stood in place, breathless, and said that she had never seen anyone doing a workout like that together before. Her heart was racing. Mia panicked and told her to stop watching, urging her to look away immediately, saying this wasn't something she should be seeing. Sohyun, still stunned, asked Mia if she hadn't been watching them too. Then she asked directly if all three of them were involved in these workout sessions together. Mia, internally distressed, realized how shocking the scene must have been for Sohyun. Yuri turned to Daeho, blaming him for jumping on her during the exercise and calling it an unusual way to work out. Daeho tried to defend himself, insisting it wasn't his fault, and instead pointed out that she had allowed him to exercise with her in the first place. He thanked her sincerely, saying that all he had wanted was to spend that time exercising with her. Sohyun, still confused, asked Daeho whether he was dating Yuri. Before he could answer, Mia stepped in and told Sohyun to wait, suggesting they go to her room to discuss things more clearly. She didn't want Sohyun to walk away with any wrong impressions. Once inside the room, Mia began explaining that Daeho and Yuri were simply very close friends, which was why they had been working out together. She asked Sohyun not to mention what she had seen to anyone, especially to her mother or to Gobong. Sohyun nodded, saying that she understood. She agreed it could cause trouble for both of them if others misunderstood the situation, even if it was just a result of them being close friends. Then, almost hesitantly, she turned to Mia and asked if she too joined in on these workout sessions with them. Mia looked at Sohyun, clearly confused, and asked what she was talking about. Sohyun clarified that she meant Mia and Daeho might also be engaging in workout sessions together. Since they lived in the same house and spent so much time together, she said she wouldn't be surprised if something like that had happened. Mia immediately panicked and began to explain that Daeho was like family to her. She added that they had been like siblings ever since they were kids, and although they weren't related by blood, their bond had always been like that of a brother and sister. Sohyun nodded, saying she understood, but pointed out that sometimes it was inevitable when a boy and a girl grew that close. It only made sense that they might end up doing things like exercising together. Yuri, losing her patience, turned to Mia and told her that there was no use making excuses anymore. Sohyun had figured it all out, so it was better to just tell her the truth. Sohyun remarked that it must be thrilling and exciting to exercise together like that while secretly living under the same roof and avoiding the attention of parents. She looked at Daeho and said she had never expected him to have that kind of experience. She had always assumed he was like Gobong, totally inexperienced in such matters. She admitted she had been a little surprised to see him exercising with Yuri. Daeho asked if that was really how he appeared to her. Sohyun then asked if he had ever participated in workout sessions before, confessing that she had always been curious and wanted to try it if the chance ever came. She added that she was sure Gobong had no experience either, and that he didn't really seem like the type who could handle such physical activities. Daeho agreed, saying that this type of exercise wasn't something Gobong could do. Sohyun smiled and asked Daeho if he could help her with such a session. She explained that it was curiosity that made her ask. She just wanted to try it and understand. Daeho reassured her, telling her to leave it to him. He promised to teach her everything and said they would keep it a secret. No one would find out that they were doing a private workout session together. He laughed at the idea, calling it a secret exercise class that even Gobong didn't know about. Mia interrupted, clearly flustered, and reminded them that tonight was supposed to be a celebration for Gobong, not a discussion about workout routines. After that, they all returned to the room where Gobong was sitting, visibly drunk. He looked up at them and asked if that was why they had taken so long. Yuri casually replied that they were going to sleep over at Mia's place tonight. She told Gobong he could share a room with Daeho, while the girls would be staying in Mia's room. Daeho smiled and told Gobong to keep drinking, reassuring him that since he would be sleeping there anyway, he didn't need to worry. Gobong admitted that he had probably drunk too much on his own while waiting for everyone, but decided he could still handle a little more. Sohyun encouraged him to take another shot, to which Gobong responded that he wasn't drunk anymore. Daeho teased him, telling him to act like a man and drink up. After several more drinks, Gobong finally passed out and ended up sleeping in Daeho's bed. Later, Daeho stepped out of his room, shaking his head and muttering that Gobong had drunk way too much. He had finished an entire bottle on his own. As he walked down the hallway, he thought to himself that the girls must be waiting for him in the other room. When he entered, Sohyun explained that the girls had said they wanted to help her. Daeho asked what was going on. Yuri replied that since it was Sohyun's first time trying a workout session, she thought it would be better if they helped guide her. Mia had even helped her by lending some workout clothes to wear. Yuri added that Daeho, being experienced, could demonstrate the exercises, and they could observe how well he handled them. She said they had been too worried to leave the two of them alone to perform such difficult exercises without support. Daeho agreed, saying it sounded like a great idea. He turned to Sohyun and assured her that she didn't need to worry. The girls were only there to assist, and he promised to teach her very gently and patiently. He added that he had a good feeling about it, that she would learn quickly and enjoy it thoroughly. Gobong was sleeping soundly on the bed, completely unaware of anything happening around him. Meanwhile, in the other room, Daeho was asking Sohyun if she was ready to begin a new training session. After finishing the workout, Sohyun stood up and said that she felt sweaty and would take a shower before going to sleep. But as she was about to leave, Daeho turned around only to find both Yuri and Mia staring directly at him. Arms crossed, their eyes narrowed. They asked in unison if he had already forgotten about them. Daeho remarked that it would be lovely if the three of them could exercise together. They all prepared to start the workout session together, and before they began, they asked Sohyun to step outside of the room. Meanwhile, on the other side of the house, Gobong had just woken up from his sleep. He rubbed his eyes and looked around, wondering if everyone else had already gone to bed. As he wandered through the hallway checking each room, he unexpectedly encountered Sohyun emerging from one of them. He asked her if she hadn't gone to sleep yet. Sohyun replied vaguely, saying that she had just woken up. Gobong, still half-dazed, mentioned that when he woke up, Daeho was already gone, and he asked whether Daeho was inside that room. At his question, Sohyun paused, looking confused and unsure of how to respond. Sohyun told Gobong that she had no idea where Daeho was. She asked if Daeho hadn't been sleeping with him. Gobong confirmed that he had, saying he was sure they had gone to sleep together. But when he woke up, Daeho had vanished. He assumed everyone had probably gathered in Mia's room. Sohyun replied that Daeho wasn't there either, explaining that they had all been asleep and she hadn't seen him anywhere. Gobong nodded but then looked at her with concern, noting how much she was sweating. She quickly claimed it was because the room had been very hot. Gobong, still suspicious but not pressing further, simply responded with a doubtful, "Oh, really?" He appeared shocked and slightly confused, then told her to go ahead and get some rest. As he returned to his room, Sohyun silently watched him walk away. Meanwhile, Gobong's mind was spinning. He had caught a brief glimpse of Sohyun's chest, faintly visible through her clothes, and it had startled him. He began to panic internally, thinking he might be the only man who had ever seen her in that situation. His thoughts took a wild turn as he began imagining himself marrying her, feeling like he had to take responsibility. In his mind, he was already planning their wedding, convinced he was one step away from becoming her husband. Meanwhile, Daeho whispered nervously that they had almost been caught by Gobong and that he needed to get back quickly. He was clearly panicking, saying that Gobong had woken up, and if he stayed any longer, things could escalate. Mia protested, asking how he could just leave the room like that. She pointed out that both Yuri and Sohyun had already had their workout sessions with him, and she was the only one left. Daeho reminded her that as the host, he had to prioritize the guests of the house. Yuri supported him, saying that since they didn't get to see Daeho often, Mia should be a little more understanding and yield her turn. Mia noticed Daeho moving toward the window and questioned him, reminding him that they were on the second floor. He replied calmly that given the risk of being caught by Gobong, he had chosen the hallway exit and said it was no different to him than something like eating dinner. With that, he jumped out of the second floor window, shouting a quick goodnight to everyone and promising to see them the next day. Sohyun, watching this, could hardly believe what she had just seen. Daeho had literally jumped down for real. Elsewhere, Gobong was still thinking that perhaps Daeho had gone downstairs, maybe to the kitchen to get some water. As he walked toward the kitchen and opened the door, he was startled by a voice. It was Auntie June who asked what he was doing there. She said she had heard a sound coming from the kitchen and came to check. Gobong apologized, saying he didn't mean to disturb her. He explained that he came looking for Daeho but ended up checking the kitchen to see if there was anything to eat. Auntie June looked surprised and asked what he meant by Daeho being missing. Gobong told her that yes, they had gone to sleep together, but when he woke up, Daeho was gone. Auntie June wondered aloud whether he might be on the second floor. Gobong told her he had already searched the entire second floor but hadn't found him, so he had come down to the first floor only to find no sign of him there either. He admitted that he had no idea where Daeho could have gone in the middle of the night. Auntie June said she didn't know either, suggesting that perhaps Daeho had gone out for a walk if he couldn't sleep. She urged Gobong to go back upstairs and assured him that Daeho would probably return soon. As Gobong turned to leave, he glanced out of the window and found himself distracted again. His heart began pounding uncontrollably as he had just seen Auntie June, and the sight left him breathless. He thought about how he had also seen Sohyun earlier, but this time it felt completely different. Seeing Auntie June felt overwhelming. He found her stunning, almost ethereal, and couldn't help but be captivated by her beauty. He began to feel guilty, thinking that he shouldn't be reacting this way. His thoughts grew more conflicted, and he told himself that this wasn't looking good at all. Meanwhile, Auntie June walked out to the backyard and began searching for Daeho, wondering where he could possibly have gone. Suddenly, she found him lying on the ground and panicked. She rushed toward him and demanded to know why he was always found lying down like that. She asked him directly what was going on and whether he had jumped down again. Daeho, with a tired smile, said that even monkeys fall from trees sometimes. He reassured her that he was fine and there was no need to worry. But Auntie June looked at him in disbelief, asking if he was hurt and what exactly was wrong with him. She scolded him, saying if he kept doing things like this, how could he expect to stay alive? She reminded him that he was literally lying down in the garden in the middle of the night. Daeho responded that he had already been lying there for a while and now felt much better. He added a soft thank you and assured her that he was fully recovered and could stand on his own now. Mia, Yuri, and Sohyun were lying on the bed together when Mia suddenly voiced her frustration, saying she was furious. Yuri turned to her and asked what was wrong, adding half-jokingly that she might as well put on her earphones if this was how things were going to be. Mia shouted in exasperation, questioning how Daeho could just leave her like that, insisting that it was too much. Yuri tried to calm her down, pointing out that Mia saw Daeho every single day, so it wasn't a real problem, especially considering that once Yuri and Sohyun left, Mia would have all the time in the world to work out with him. But Mia didn't let it go and snapped that she had been too kind to them lately and that this was unforgivable. Meanwhile, in another room, Gobong was lying in bed, struggling to sleep. His thoughts were preoccupied with June. Despite knowing she was a middle-aged woman, he couldn't stop thinking about how beautiful she looked. He wondered how it was even possible and questioned how he was supposed to deal with such overwhelming beauty. He admitted to himself that this situation was quickly getting out of hand for him. Outside, in the garden, Daeho was speaking to June. He pointed out that it wasn't just him at home. Gobong was there as well. He told her that it was reckless of her to walk around dressed like that. June mentioned that she had already run into Gobong in the living room earlier. Daeho was shocked, asking if she was serious when she had met Gobong wearing that outfit. June confirmed it but added that Gobong was a good kid and surely wouldn't think anything inappropriate. Daeho, however, insisted that she didn't understand men well enough. Even though Gobong was a good person, he was still a male. Daeho said with certainty that Gobong would not be able to sleep after seeing her like that and would probably spend the entire night thinking about her. June disagreed, saying it was impossible. She was already a middle-aged woman and didn't think anyone would react that way. Daeho retorted that such things wouldn't happen if she didn't wear such revealing clothes. June looked hurt and asked if he truly meant what he was saying, adding that his words were painful to hear. Still flustered, Daeho told her he couldn't believe that Gobong had seen her dressed like that and admitted he was genuinely upset about it. June tried to reassure him, saying he didn't need to worry, she wouldn't let anyone else see her like this. Daeho, half teasing and half serious, asked if that meant she wouldn't even let her husband, Uncle Yonggu, see her in that outfit anymore. He told her that from now on, she belonged only to him with no exceptions. He insisted that even her husband should be treated like an outsider from now on. June chuckled and asked how that could be possible. Yonggu was her husband after all, but Daeho brushed it off, saying none of that mattered to him and that she should simply do as he said. Eventually, June gave in and softly said she understood. Back in her room, Mia was still fuming about Daeho. She couldn't believe how boldly he had acted. In her mind, she felt entitled as the eldest daughter of the house. She believed she had the right to everything. Feeling increasingly indignant, she stood up and marched toward Daeho's room. However, the moment she opened the door, she was surprised to find Gobong lying on the bed. Her eyes widened as she wondered aloud what he was doing there. Gobong sat frozen, staring at Mia with wide eyes, as though he hadn't heard her properly. His lips parted, but no words escaped. The idea of Mia, Daeho's older sister and the authoritative eldest daughter of the house, offering to help him with exercise felt utterly surreal. She observed him in silence for a moment, clearly amused by the stunned look on his face. Mia lifted an eyebrow and crossed her arms, her tone carrying a mix of playfulness and firmness, as she asked whether he didn't want her help now. Gobong quickly shook his head, stumbling over his words as he admitted that he did want help, but was simply surprised. He hadn't expected her to offer. With a smirk, Mia walked past him and glanced at the dumbbells he had clumsily stacked beside the bed. She said he shouldn't make the situation awkward and picked one up, stating that since he didn't know how to take care of himself, she would show him a few things, but he was to follow her instructions exactly. Gobong nodded with urgency, still unsure if he was dreaming. Mia knelt beside him and adjusted his posture confidently, her touch assured and precise, almost reminiscent of Daeho's manner. She instructed him to keep his back straight, warning that he might injure himself otherwise. She told him not to lean forward and directed him to tighten his core, asking if he could feel the difference. Gobong nodded, doing his best to follow her guidance, though the close proximity made it difficult to concentrate. Her presence, her scent, and the casual intimacy of her kneeling beside him caused his heart to pound uncontrollably. Meanwhile, on the other side of the house, June wrapped herself in a light shawl as she and Daeho slowly walked back toward the house under the night breeze. She glanced sideways at him and remarked that even when he scolded her, it felt different. No one had spoken to her that way in a long time, not even Yonggu. Daeho's expression turned serious. He said that perhaps she had been surrounded by the wrong people, adding that he didn't care what anyone else said. When she was with him, she didn't have to play the roles of a wife, a mother, or an aunt. She was simply Uni, and that was the only version of her that mattered to him. June came to a stop. The moonlight cast a gentle glow across her face. She asked if he truly meant what he said. Without hesitation, Daeho nodded and assured her that he had never meant anything more sincerely. A soft, quiet smile appeared on her lips, and for a moment, the entire garden seemed to hold its breath for them. Upstairs, Gobong finally completed 2 sets of the routine Mia had instructed. He collapsed onto the floor, panting, while Mia sat beside him, dabbing sweat from her neck with a towel. She said that it was enough for the day and leaned back against the wall. She told him he had done better than she had expected. Gobong let out a breathless laugh and thanked her sincerely. She turned toward him and remarked that he wasn't as useless as he often claimed to be. Outside, June and Daeho paused at the garden entrance before heading back indoors. She placed a light touch on his arm and expressed her gratitude for the night, saying he had reminded her that she was more than just someone's past. Daeho smiled and gently brushed a strand of hair from her face. He assured her that she had never needed reminding, but if she did, he would do so every day, as many times as it took. The two of them stepped back into the house quietly, unaware that something subtle had shifted within its walls. Bonds were reshaping, affections stirring, and hearts quietly moving in directions none of them had fully anticipated. Gobong, still slightly confused and overwhelmed, looked at Mia and told her that he didn't quite understand what she meant, but asked if she truly intended to help him with exercise. Mia responded with a subtle scoff, asking why he was staring at her like that. As Gobong watched her, he wondered silently if she might actually be feeling shy. Meanwhile, Uni, June, and Daeho had finished their exercise and were catching their breath. Daeho remarked that the session had been a pleasant surprise for the middle of the night. June replied that she was simply glad he enjoyed it and added that she would now return to her bedroom and get some sleep. Daeho mentioned that he was feeling a little hungry and would grab a snack before heading back upstairs. She nodded in understanding and headed toward her room. As she walked back through the hallway, June reflected inwardly. A quiet apology echoed in her mind for the choices she was making, yet she couldn't deny the genuine joy and pleasure she had felt. It had been a long time since she had experienced such warmth and happiness in her heart, and she reassured herself that there was no need to feel guilty about something so deeply human. Back in Daeho's room, Gobong and Mia were now engaged in an unusual and rather intense discussion about exercise. Mia told him, with an arched brow, that although he looked so pure and innocent, she was curious about what he had really been thinking when he had looked at her that way. She reminded him about Sohyun, asking if he hadn't said before that he wanted to get closer to her. Gobong nodded in agreement. Mia said that, for that reason, she was going to help both him and Sohyun. She offered to teach him all the necessary workout lessons and techniques so things would go more smoothly between them. She assumed he had never really done any proper exercise with another person before. Gobong admitted that the only physical interaction he'd had with Sohyun was holding her hand, nothing else. At that, Mia leaned in and whispered something directly into his ear. Gobong's eyes widened, and he asked, with a mix of awe and disbelief, whether she truly intended to help him practice exercises with Sohyun and teach him all the necessary techniques. Mia quickly hushed him, telling him to keep his voice down and not to say such things aloud. Gobong, grateful and visibly moved, expressed his thanks, saying that if her help really worked, she could treat him like a servant for the rest of his life. Mia, unimpressed, replied that she had no interest in a servant like him, she was simply helping him out, nothing more. Just then, the door creaked open slightly, and Daeho peeked inside. His gaze landed on the unexpected sight of Mia inside his room with Gobong. He stepped in fully, raising an eyebrow as he asked Gobong what he was doing there in the middle of the night. Gobong replied with a questioning tone of his own, asking where Daeho had been just moments ago. Daeho casually said he had gone to the kitchen to grab a snack. Gobong, still suspicious, pointed out that he hadn't seen Daeho when he had gone downstairs himself earlier. In response, Daeho claimed that after grabbing the snack, he had also made a quick stop at the convenience store nearby. Turning toward Mia, he then asked what she was doing in his room with Gobong so late at night. Mia smoothly responded that Gobong had been looking for Daeho, and since she couldn't find him, she had come to check the room. The next morning, sunlight streamed through the windows as Yuri prepared to head home. She cheerfully waved at everyone, saying she had enjoyed herself immensely the previous night. She suggested that they should meet again soon, adding that she knew a great spot where they could throw a proper party. Daeho offered his farewell to Yuri with a warm smile, and also said goodbye to Sohyun and Gobong, who were standing nearby. The atmosphere was light, but underneath the surface, new relationships and quiet emotions had begun to take form, subtle, yet undeniably shifting the dynamic within the house. As Mia stood there, she looked directly at Daeho and brought up the matter that had been weighing on her mind. She reminded him that they had some unfinished business from the previous night and asked him what he thought about settling it now. Without waiting for a response, she grabbed him by the arm and told him that he needed to be punished for having left her out the night before. Daeho, caught off guard, quickly apologized, insisting that he hadn't meant to upset her. Mia asked him what exactly he was sorry for. He responded hesitantly, saying that he regretted training everyone else in exercise but failing to include her. At that, Mia's tone became sharper as she asked whether he now understood why she had been so angry. She admitted that she couldn't comprehend it herself, why she couldn't stand him teasing her like that anymore. With her emotions boiling over, she demanded he tell her plainly what he wanted from her, declaring that whatever it was, she would give it to him. His expression shifted, and his voice took on an emotional edge. He told her that what he truly wanted was to have his little brother back. His words left her confused, prompting her to ask what he even meant by that, genuinely baffled by the sudden turn the conversation had taken. Sua sat on the beach, her eyes drifting over the waves as she reflected on her decision to come. She thought that she had come to see the sea, perhaps to clear her mind. The beach was crowded with tourists, and it seemed that most people had already returned home by then. She wondered why she had even come at all, thinking that maybe it would have been better to just go back home. The heat was oppressive, making her regret staying out. Just then, two boys approached her. One of them mentioned that they had been watching her from behind for a while and simply wanted to say that she looked incredibly pretty at that moment. He asked whether she had come alone and suggested that the three of them could go enjoy a nice, cold drink together. Sua, clearly unimpressed, told them to go away. She explained that she wasn't a tourist and that she lived there, so they should try their luck with someone else. One of the boys expressed surprise, claiming that someone as beautiful as her didn't seem like a local. He continued to flatter her, saying he hadn't realized just how stunning she was. He added that they had come from the city to have some fun and wondered if she would be interested in joining them. Sua, growing increasingly irritated, told them that they were being annoying and that she wasn't interested, asking them to leave her alone. The boys, however, continued with their comments. One of them remarked that she was probably the prettiest girl on the entire beach, while the other added that even her anger made her look more beautiful. They went on to say that they didn't expect to find a girl like her in the countryside, and perhaps she was even the most beautiful girl in the entire city. Sua heard every word they said, her expression unreadable. Meanwhile, on the other side, Daeho and Mia were preparing to do their workout together. Daeho remarked that it felt really good to be alone with her for a while. Suddenly, Sua returned home and walked in on them while they were exercising. She commented dryly that they were already working out, adding that the two of them must really love doing exercises together. Daeho was surprised to see her. Sua, with a hint of sarcasm, asked whether they hadn't already drunk and enjoyed themselves the night before. Wasn't that enough for the both of them? Mia responded bluntly, saying she hadn't had the chance to enjoy herself all night, nor had she gotten to do any exercises. Sua retorted by asking who exactly Mia had been with all night, if not exercising. Daeho, sensing her growing tension, asked why she seemed so upset and what had happened. Sua simply stared at him, her expression heavy with something she didn't say out loud. Sua looked at Daeho with disbelief and demanded how he could do something like that. In frustration, she punched him, pointing out that Gobong was his friend. Daeho admitted that Gobong was, in fact, his best friend. Sua questioned how he could still go ahead and train with Gobong's girlfriend, asking whether he didn't feel guilty at all for what he had done. Daeho had no excuses to offer. He simply confessed that he didn't have anything to say to justify himself. Mia tried to step in, explaining that the situation unfolded the way it did because Sohyun also wanted to learn more advanced exercise techniques. But Sua refused to let that explanation slide. She insisted that whether Sohyun wanted to learn or not, the responsibility still fell on Daeho. Sua turned to Mia and asked how she, as an adult woman, could possibly encourage Gobong rather than stopping him from going down that path. Mia admitted that she felt sorry for Gobong and was only trying to help him, hoping that he would be able to teach his girlfriend the exercises confidently. Daeho then questioned whether Mia was seriously intending to give Sohyun to Gobong. Mia immediately corrected him, saying that Sohyun wasn't an object to be given away. She clarified that Sohyun and Gobong were taking things slowly but were still seeing each other. Daeho countered that Sohyun was much closer to him and, in many ways, had already become his woman. He seemed unwilling to accept that she could go back to Gobong. Mia accused him of being greedy and told him that just because he had taught Sohyun how to exercise didn't mean he owned her. Sua, still upset, declared that the whole situation was completely wrong. Daeho, becoming more defensive, insisted that he had done more than just train with Sohyun. He had been the first man to guide her in that way, and it wouldn't be right for her to return to Gobong afterward. Mia responded by saying that this didn't change the fact that he had effectively stolen Gobong's girlfriend. Sua added that teaching someone to exercise didn't make them someone's possession. Daeho, now growing emotional, turned to Sua and asked whether she was his woman or not. Sua replied that she was sorry, but she wasn't his woman. Daeho tried to argue that he had also trained her and had been the only man she had ever consistently worked out with. Sua told him that his reasoning was flawed and that, to her, he was more like a younger brother. Daeho refused to accept that, saying it was fine if she didn't agree, but in his eyes, she was still his woman, no matter what. He then asked her whether she had ever done workouts with another man. Sua, stunned, questioned what he was even talking about. Daeho pressed further, asking if she could truly live without training with him. Sua, exasperated, told him to shut up and demanded that he behave himself properly. He insisted that none of that mattered because in his heart, she belonged to him. Sua grabbed his arm and told him that just because he touched her didn't mean she was his woman. She warned him not to cross any lines or she wouldn't hesitate to push him away. Daeho backed off and said fine, but then asked her to apologize and beg him for having taught her the exercises. Sua replied that she could never say something like that, but in a sudden emotional shift, she trembled and softly said she was sorry. Mia, observing the entire exchange from the side, couldn't help but comment aloud that Sua seemed jealous of Daeho. Mia stood in the distance, quietly observing Daeho with Sua, her mind clouded with concern. She wondered what exactly Daeho was trying to do with Sua, and whether he even realized that, at this pace, he was going to completely overwhelm her. Mia thought to herself that Sua had never learned or experienced physical training with any man before. If she got used to exercising regularly with Daeho, she might never feel satisfied with any other trainer or man. She feared Sua would eventually end up becoming Daeho's girl. In her thoughts, Mia compared Sua's innocence to that of Sohyun. She believed it could be dangerous if Sua only exercised with Daeho. But more than concern for Sua or even Gobong, Mia convinced herself that this was ultimately for Sohyun's sake. She knew she had to intervene. As the unofficial big sister of the group, Mia felt it was her responsibility to stop Daeho from manipulating Sohyun like he did with others. She thought to herself that Daeho already had too many girls around him, he didn't need more. The next day, Mia arranged to meet Sohyun at a cafe. Once they sat down, she began to tell her everything. Mia urged Sohyun to start exercising with Gobong as soon as possible. Sohyun, caught off guard, admitted that she and Gobong hadn't even kissed yet. Mia was stunned and asked her what she meant by that. Sohyun explained that while nothing physical had happened between her and Gobong, she had already done the workout training with Daeho, and now she didn't know what to do. Mia told her she had completely misunderstood things. Gobong was her boyfriend, not Daeho. Daeho had only helped her with the exercises as a favor, nothing more. Sohyun said she couldn't make sense of any of it. Mia asked her directly whether she was planning to leave Gobong and start a relationship with Daeho, and if she really believed that was possible. Sohyun responded hesitantly, admitting that she hadn't thought that far ahead. She recognized that Gobong was a sweet boy and clearly had feelings for her, but she seemed conflicted. Mia told her firmly to just follow her instructions. The fact that she had trained with Daeho once didn't mean she could now be his girlfriend. Sohyun reluctantly agreed, saying Mia was right. She acknowledged that Gobong and Daeho were best friends and admitted she didn't want to be the cause of their friendship breaking apart. Mia decided it was time to act and told Sohyun that she would call Gobong and tell him everything. Sohyun looked alarmed and asked what Mia meant by that. Mia replied that it was best to resolve the situation quickly and clearly. She suggested they bring Gobong over so he and Sohyun could finally work out together. Sohyun, panicking, said she didn't understand what Mia was doing. She was clearly nervous and overwhelmed. A short while later, both Daeho and Gobong arrived. Daeho was the first to speak, asking what was going on. Mia turned to him and asked why he had come, pointing out that she had specifically told Gobong to come alone. Gobong explained that he had been with Daeho when Mia called and, since she had offered to buy him dessert, he hadn't wanted to leave Daeho behind. Daeho added that since Mia had asked him to come too, it didn't seem strange. He then questioned why Mia had only called Gobong and Sohyun. Mia answered that she had called Gobong because he was Sohyun's boyfriend. She explained that she had run into Sohyun while shopping for hair products. And that was all. The group then went to a nearby ice cream shop together. Sitting down, they began enjoying their desserts. Gobong commented cheerfully on how delicious the ice cream looked and expressed disbelief that it was still summer. Mia agreed, noting that this summer felt much longer than the ones before. They all began eating their ice creams. Eventually, Sohyun stood up and said she had eaten enough. She mentioned that it was getting a little too cold for her and excused herself to the bathroom. Once there, she began washing her face, trying to clear her thoughts. She couldn't shake off how awkward it felt seeing Daeho and Gobong together like this. While she stood at the sink, lost in thought, Daeho suddenly appeared behind her. The unexpected presence startled her. Daeho looked at her quietly and told her that he was just curious. He wanted to know if she had missed him. Sohyun looked at Daeho in disbelief and asked what he was doing there, pointing out that it was the girls' washroom. She warned him that if someone saw him, he could get into trouble. But Daeho, unconcerned, replied that it was fine, no one else was in the cafe besides them anyway. What he truly wanted, he said, was to know whether she had missed him. He also added that he wanted to have another workout session with her, right there. Sohyun immediately rejected the idea, telling him he couldn't do that. But Daeho continued, saying he had only come to ask how she had felt after their first session. He hoped she had found it unforgettable. He asked if she had been thinking about it and whether she had wanted to do it again. Since it had been her first time, he figured she must have been confused and curious. He offered to guide her through it again just like before. Sohyun, clearly uncomfortable, reminded him that Gobong was sitting right outside. Daeho told her not to worry about him, suggesting that they could sneak away later once he gave her a signal. He then asked why she was sweating so much and added that it seemed he had no other choice. Meanwhile, Mia and Gobong were still at the cafe table. Mia was growing increasingly suspicious. She thought it was strange that Sohyun had gone to the bathroom and that Daeho had followed shortly after, yet neither of them had returned. Her mind raced. Could they be doing something there? Maybe even exercising? Unable to wait any longer, Mia stood up and told Gobong that she needed to use the bathroom. Gobong asked if she was feeling unwell too, but Mia told him firmly to just wait there and that she'd be back soon. He nodded, joking that everyone seemed to be having stomach issues today, and laughed as he said maybe he could have all the food to himself. He playfully thanked his mom for giving him a strong stomach that allowed him to eat anything. Back in the bathroom, Sohyun and Daeho had begun exercising together. Sohyun commented that it didn't hurt like it had the first time, and that it actually felt much better now. Daeho responded positively, suggesting that they could speed things up a bit. Mia reached the bathroom and carefully sneaked closer, following the faint sounds coming from inside. She paused, certain she was hearing what sounded like a workout session. Confused and slightly alarmed, she quietly entered. Upon seeing the two of them exercising, she immediately confronted them, asking what they had been thinking. What if someone else had walked in instead of her? Daeho, seemingly unfazed, said he was glad it was just Mia and asked her to stand nearby and watch for anyone approaching, suggesting she warn them if someone came. Mia was shocked and reminded him that Gobong was waiting outside. Daeho admitted he knew and replied that he'd finish quickly. Sohyun turned to Daeho, unsure and troubled, asking what exactly he was trying to do. But Daeho insisted there was nothing to worry about and that everything was fine. He then told Mia to hold the door for a while and assured her he would wrap things up soon. Mia stood still, watching the two of them continuing their intense workout session. A heavy thought crossed her mind. Was Daeho really trying to break Sohyun by pushing her through all these advanced, demanding exercises? Gobong was still seated at a table, eating and declaring that he had finished everything on his plate but still wanted more. He announced that he would order another portion and then raised his hand to call for the waitress. When she approached, he told her that he would like one more of the same dish. The waitress looked confused, unsure of what exactly he was continuing to eat so eagerly, but eventually accepted his order. Meanwhile, Daeho and Sohyun were in the middle of their workout session. Daeho remarked that although the routine might be a bit intense for her, especially since it was only her second time doing it, he was confident she would come to enjoy it. Mia was standing nearby, observing them with concern. She thought to herself that Daeho seemed to have gone a little mad. He was being unusually serious and feared that if they continued for a few more minutes, Sohyun might end up falling for him. The thought made Mia increasingly anxious. She felt that at this rate, Sohyun might completely forget about Gobong. Back at the restaurant, Gobong continued to indulge in more food. Around that time, the others arrived at the table to join him. Daeho looked at Gobong in disbelief and commented that he couldn't believe how much food Gobong had ordered. He admitted he knew Gobong had a large appetite but still found it excessive, and then burst into laughter. After finishing their meal, the four of them left the restaurant together. As they stepped outside, Mia announced that she had to go somewhere with Sohyun and told the others they would meet again later. Both Gobong and Daeho were taken aback by this. Gobong asked in surprise whether they were really going off alone. Daeho turned to Mia and reminded her that he had thought the four of them were going to continue spending time together. Mia responded firmly, saying that she had been the one who invited Sohyun today and pointed out that Daeho had already had enough fun. She insisted that it would be better for the two of them, Daeho and Gobong, to leave the girls alone for a while. Mia then took Sohyun by the hand and began walking with her, eventually leading them to a motel. Sohyun, looking confused and uneasy, asked why they were there and admitted she had never been to a motel before. She demanded to know what Mia was planning. Mia replied that she felt compelled to do something about the current situation. As the two of them sat inside a motel room, Mia continued explaining that despite everything going on, Sohyun was still Gobong's girlfriend. Sohyun acknowledged that Mia was right, but admitted that she had already worked out with Daeho twice. At that, Mia's expression turned serious, and she raised her voice, insisting that this was precisely why Sohyun needed to give Gobong a chance. Mia emphasized that it was the right thing to do and hoped Sohyun was prepared for it. When Sohyun asked if Mia meant she should have an exercise session with Gobong instead, Mia confirmed it. She added that she had already spoken to him earlier and asked him to come to the motel after seeing Daeho off. As Mia began dialing something on her phone, a knock came at the door. Mia turned to Sohyun and said it must be Gobong. She opened the door, and as expected, Gobong stood there, appearing nervous and confused. He said he had come just as Mia had asked and then greeted Sohyun. Sohyun, equally puzzled, looked at him with surprise. Mia then said she would leave the two of them alone and wished them a good time. As Mia left, Gobong turned to Sohyun and admitted that he didn't quite understand why Mia had arranged for them to meet at a motel. Sohyun hesitated for a moment before telling him that she genuinely thought he was a nice guy. She added that she wanted to have an exercise session with him, believing it would give her a chance to get to know him better. Gobong responded with a warm expression, saying he felt the same way and that he was there because he wanted to understand her more deeply as well. Daeho was standing outside the motel, discreetly peeking toward the entrance. Suddenly, he saw Mia exiting the building, and he was struck with shock. His thoughts raced. He couldn't understand what she was doing there, especially since he had just seen Gobong enter that same motel moments ago. Inside the motel room, Gobong and Sohyun were together. Gobong hesitantly asked whether they were really going to have their workout session there. Sohyun replied that she needed a moment first. She wanted to take a shower before they began exercising. Gobong told her that it was no problem and assured her he would wait. She told him she would return shortly and suggested he watch television while waiting. Outside the motel, Daeho stood in a state of confusion, trying to make sense of what he had just witnessed. He found it strange that Mia had come out of the motel immediately after Gobong had gone in. He reasoned that there wouldn't have been enough time for any kind of workout to take place between them. Moreover, he recalled that Gobong had told him earlier that he was heading home, which only deepened his suspicions. He questioned what Gobong was really doing there, and whether he was in the motel with Sohyun. Back in the motel room, Sohyun emerged from the bathroom after her shower. Gobong, feeling flustered and shy, nervously asked if she had finished showering. But then, noticing something odd, he commented on her clothes, questioning why she had changed without actually taking a shower. Sohyun replied with a calm yes, and removed her glasses. Gobong, caught off guard by her appearance, complimented her, telling her she looked very pretty at that moment. Meanwhile, outside the motel room, Daeho continued to stare at his phone in growing distress. He noticed that Sohyun wasn't answering his calls, and it caused him to tremble with anxiety. He wondered why she wasn't responding. After all, girls usually had their phones with them. His concern grew as he looked at the motel and began to question whether Sohyun was really inside having a workout session with Gobong, or if he was simply misinterpreting everything. Inside the room, Gobong and Sohyun had begun their workout session. At one point, Gobong suddenly stopped, and Sohyun urged him to continue, encouraging him by saying he was performing very well. After completing their session, the two of them exited the motel together. From his vantage point, Daeho saw them walking out and froze in disbelief. Panic set in as he struggled to process what he was seeing. He thought to himself that there was no way it could be true, that they had actually gone through with the workout session together inside the motel. Daeho was overwhelmed with panic and anger as thoughts raced through his mind. He couldn't believe what he had just witnessed. Sohyun had recently done a workout session with him, and now she had already gone into a motel to exercise with Gobong. The sight of Gobong and Sohyun holding hands only intensified his confusion. He stood frozen, trembling as he tried to process everything, and overheard their conversation. Sohyun asked Gobong if he was hungry, to which Gobong replied that he was a little. Daeho's thoughts spiraled further. He couldn't understand how someone like Gobong could be so close with a girl like Sohyun. The scene unfolding before him only deepened his distress. He gritted his teeth and blamed Mia, thinking that she had manipulated the situation and played a game with him, and now she would have to pay the price. Filled with fury, he rushed home. Upon arriving, he saw Mia sitting casually, immersed in reading a comic book and commenting on how addictive it was. Daeho flung the door open and called out to her angrily, demanding to know what she had just done. Mia, startled, looked up in confusion and asked what he was talking about, insisting she didn't do anything. Daeho began shouting, accusing her of orchestrating the situation and arranging for Gobong and Sohyun to have a workout session together. He claimed she had set them up. Mia, trying to stay composed, replied that Gobong and Sohyun were dating, so it was natural for them to work out together. But Daeho continued pressing her. He accused her of luring an innocent guy like Gobong into a motel and giving him the opportunity to be alone with Sohyun. Mia started to panic, confused as to how Daeho knew so much. She tried to defend herself, saying that it wasn't wrong for her to support Gobong, especially since he was Sohyun's boyfriend and not Daeho. She told him he shouldn't be panicking over something that wasn't his concern. She also argued that if Daeho truly considered Gobong a friend, he should be helping him improve instead of reacting this way. She questioned whether he even felt sorry for Gobong at all. But Daeho, growing more agitated, grabbed Mia's arm and challenged her. He asked if she really felt sorry for Gobong. Then why hadn't she helped him herself? Confused and shaken, Mia asked what he meant. Daeho shouted that if she wanted to help Gobong, she could have taught him the workout routines herself. There was no reason to send Sohyun, who clearly hadn't even wanted to be there. Then, with suspicion in his voice, he accused Mia of secretly wanting to work out with Gobong herself. Mia protested, telling him to let go of her because he was hurting her. Daeho continued pressing, demanding to know if she truly had a desire to exercise with Gobong. Mia, distressed, told him he was speaking nonsense and insisted there was no way she had such intentions. She shouted back that she didn't even like guys who looked like Gobong, calling him ugly. In a sudden burst of rage, Daeho slapped Mia across the face and yelled, asking why. If that was true, she thought Sohyun would like someone like Gobong. Mia began crying, begging him to stop hurting her. Daeho told her she needed to be punished. He admitted that he hadn't wanted to hurt her because she was his sister, but said her actions had gone too far. He accused her of planning to have a workout session with Gobong herself, and claimed she was preparing for that. Mia, horrified, denied everything and told him she would never do something like that. She expressed shock at how strange and disturbing his behavior had become. But Daeho only became more intense. He said he was going to help her understand and told her to think of him as Gobong, to imagine doing a workout session with him. He claimed that was what she deserved for making him so angry. He went on to insult Gobong, calling him slow and stupid, only capable of doing basic exercises. Mia, through her tears, told Daeho to say whatever he wanted, but insisted she would never work out with Gobong. Daeho responded mockingly, saying that her strong denial was proof that she actually did want to do a workout session with Gobong, and that her true desire was obvious. Daeho asked Mia directly if she truly wanted to have a workout session with Gobong. Mia kept denying it, insisting repeatedly for him to stop bringing up Gobong's name. But Daeho taunted her, saying that she would eventually end up working out with him anyway. Mia firmly rejected the idea, stating that she would never exercise with someone like Gobong. Daeho refused to believe her. He asked if she wanted him to forgive her, then declared that from now on, she would be his servant. That would mean he could play and perform exercises with her whenever he wanted. Was she okay with that? Mia, feeling cornered, agreed. She said she would be his servant from now on. Daeho made it clear that she would have to follow every order he gave or face punishment. He laughed and reiterated that she had accepted his terms and conditions and agreed to serve him from now on. If she broke her promise, he warned, he would never see her again. Mia replied that she wouldn't disobey any of his orders. After that, Daeho stood up and went to his room. There, he made a phone call, asking someone if they had managed to copy the keys to a safe. He sounded satisfied, saying they had done well. On the other end of the call, a woman told him that the safe was very old and not easy to work with, but now that they had the copied keys, they could open it without needing anything else. Daeho asked when the office would be empty, as he wanted to inspect the safe himself. The woman he was speaking to was Seolhee. She told him that her husband was away on a business trip for 3 days, and that she would pick him up from the station whenever he arrived. Daeho laughed and said he would see her later that night. Downstairs, Daeho told Auntie June that he was going to the city that evening. Auntie June was surprised and asked what he was talking about. He explained that something urgent had come up and he needed to go. Auntie June reminded him that she had already prepared dinner and mentioned that it was raining outside. How would he manage in such weather? Daeho told her not to worry and that he would handle it. He then left the house and made his way to the station to head into the city. Once in the city, Daeho stood in a quiet spot, glancing at his phone while waiting for someone. He thought to himself that he had been standing there for a while. Suddenly, Seolhee appeared behind him and asked how his trip was. Daeho replied that it had been good, and that he had slept through the entire journey without waking up. Seolhee asked if he had waited long. He told her he had just arrived. She suggested they go for dinner first, but Daeho declined, saying they should go open the safe first. He didn't have any appetite and they could eat later. She agreed and told him to come with her, offering to drive them in her car. After a short ride, they arrived at a building. Seolhee explained that it was Mr. Park's company. The office looked modern and well-maintained. She told him to follow her and that she would show him the way. Before they entered, Daeho pulled something out and showed it to her, asking her to wear it. Seolhee was surprised and hesitated, telling him the outfit was a bit too tight for her. Still, she went and put it on, complaining that it was uncomfortable and questioning why he had made her wear something so tight. Daeho said it was perfect for sneaking into an office at night. After all, it wasn't something one could wear just anywhere. Seol-hee nervously agreed, saying she had never worn anything like it before and worried about the possibility of being seen. Daeho reassured her, explaining that's why they needed to be careful and avoid getting caught. He added that the danger made the mission all the more exciting and thrilling. Seol-hee urged him to hurry and get inside. As they stood outside the building, Daeho found himself restless. He couldn't shake off the strange urge to exercise before beginning the important mission. Standing there in the silence of the night, he realized that it felt like he needed to work out with Seol-hee before opening the safe. Daeho remarked that it was unusually quiet. There didn't seem to be anyone around. Seol-hee agreed, noting that all the lights were off and that no one typically worked at this hour. She motioned for him to follow her, adding that Mr. Park's office was this way. As they moved through the empty corridors, Daeho was lost in thought, struggling with an overwhelming urge. He felt he wouldn't be able to resist unless he exercised right there. Without warning, he grabbed Seol-hee. She gasped, startled, and asked what he was doing. Daeho replied that he had assumed she wanted to exercise with him too, and that he simply couldn't help himself. Seol-hee, still confused, reminded him that he was the one who told her to wear the outfit for tonight's task. Daeho acknowledged it, but admitted he hadn't expected the sight of her in the outfit to make him feel such a strong desire to work out with her. He added that being in this situation, in this setting, felt strangely new and different. Seol-hee, trying to refocus him, urged him to stop talking like that, reminding him that they were about to do something serious and important. But Daeho argued that this was exactly why they needed to exercise right there. It would help relieve stress and allow them to concentrate better on their mission. He then asked, somewhat playfully, how to take the suit off. Seol-hee told him that there was a zipper on the back, though he was pulling it down too far. He paused and told her she looked beautiful in the dress. Seol-hee, unsure of how to respond, asked hesitantly if they were really going to do a workout session in her husband's office. Daeho confirmed it with certainty. Yoon-jun was lying on her bed, unable to fall asleep. She suddenly opened her eyes, confused about why she had woken up so abruptly. It felt as if someone had been calling her name out loud, echoing in her mind. Suddenly, Daeho handed the keys to Seol-hee and told her they were right there. She took them and said they had finally managed to get it open. As the safe creaked open, rows of documents came into view. She explained that her husband had kept all the important paperwork inside, dating from the company's founding to the present day. That, she added, was the reason they had come. Daeho stepped forward and said he only needed to look at a specific set of files, so it would probably not take long. She looked at him, confused, and asked what he meant by specific. He clarified that he was searching for documents from the time his father had died. She stood silently, clearly puzzled, as he began sifting through the files. As he examined them, he muttered that there were several suspicious entries in the records from that particular period. She asked what he was trying to say and what exactly he was looking for. He pulled out a file labeled Black Wind and handed it to her. He told her to look at it and pointed out that the company had been paid multiple times, but there were no records showing any transactions beyond those payments. They had kept sending money, yet there were no details of goods, services, or anything in return. She said that kind of thing wasn't completely unusual in business. Perhaps the company had provided a kind of service that wasn't documented properly. But Daeho remained unconvinced. He pointed out that right before the payments to Black Wind were made, Mr. Cha had transferred money to Mr. Park. The exact same amount, in fact. She repeated Mr. Cha's name in surprise and acknowledged that he and Mr. Park had been long-time business partners. Still, she noted that the matching figures and timing seemed too precise to be coincidental. Daeho said there was a phone number listed in the file, and he planned to call it. Everything suggested that Mr. Cha might have been funneling money to the Black Wind Company. As he began to dial, he explained that his voice might sound too young over the phone, so he asked her to speak instead and find out what kind of company it really was. Seol-hee stood there, stunned by how sharp and focused Daeho had suddenly become. She murmured to herself that he was starting to scare her. She also said she had a bad feeling about this and that it was already too late to be calling anyone. Most offices would be closed by now. Daeho disagreed. He said this was actually the perfect time to call, because most criminal dealings happened at night. He handed her the phone again and told her to go ahead. Hesitantly, she took it and glanced at him, silently questioning if he truly meant it. She then dialed the number and greeted the person who answered, asking if it was the Black Wind Company. There was a pause. A man's voice came through, asking what kind of Black Wind Company she was referring to. He said he hadn't heard that name in a long time. Seol-hee replied that she was calling from Muryoung Corporation, and that they had worked together before. After another pause, the man's voice returned, low and cold. He said he remembered the name Muryoung. Then he asked who she wanted him to kill this time. She ended the call with a quiet affirmation that she would be seeing him soon and then hung up. Turning toward Daeho, Seol-hee informed him that the call was complete. He responded with satisfaction, telling her she had done an excellent job by arranging a meeting with the man. It was quite impressive, he added. She looked at him uneasily and asked why he wanted to meet such a person, admitting she wasn't sure who the man was but felt this could be extremely dangerous. Daeho explained that he had to meet the man in order to gather more information. That, he said, was why he needed her help. Seol-hee hesitated and nodded, though her expression showed she was far from comfortable with the idea. The next morning, Auntie June was in the kitchen when her phone rang. It was Seol-hee. Auntie June mentioned she was at home and had some free time. She said she could come to the city that very day, but asked if Seol-hee could at least explain what was going on. Seol-hee answered that it was something important, something that involved Auntie June as well. She promised to explain everything in detail once she arrived. It was still too early to say anything for sure, she added, and urged her not to worry too much for now. After ending the call, she turned to Daeho and told him that June had agreed to come by that evening. They should go pick her up later. Daeho nodded and said that while they waited for Yooni to arrive in the city, they should quickly finish their workout so they could go and meet her. Later, after completing the workout, the two of them arrived at the station to pick up Yooni. Yooni June greeted Seol-hee with a bright smile, saying how happy she was to see her again. Seol-hee welcomed her warmly, asking how she had been. Yooni responded that she was doing well and remarked that Seol-hee looked especially lovely that day. Seol-hee thanked her sincerely and suggested they head straight to the hotel. Once they were all settled in a hotel room, Seol-hee began to explain everything in detail to June. After hearing the entire account, Yooni June sat quietly for a moment before admitting that, even after listening to all of it, she still wasn't sure what it all meant. She asked what any of it actually proved and who exactly the man on the phone was. Seol-hee agreed, saying that she felt uncertain. The evidence they currently had wasn't strong enough to prove anything definitively. Daeho stepped in and said that he didn't want to accuse anyone based purely on speculation. They would likely find out more after meeting the man later that night. He added that based on his investigation so far, it was highly probable that the people responsible for his parents' deaths, the ones who had made him an orphan, were Mr. Cha and Mr. Park. At that moment, both June and Seol-hee froze in place, stunned by his words. They stood there in disbelief and exclaimed that such a thing could not be true. They said it was impossible, it had to be a lie. Yooni June turned to Daeho, her voice trembling with disbelief as she asked how he could say such a thing about her husband, Mr. Cha. She reminded him that Mr. Cha was the one who had taken him in and raised him into the man he was now. She insisted that he should not speak so terribly of the man who had cared for him like a father. Daeho responded calmly, saying it was only one possibility. He admitted that there was a chance he could be wrong and that he was aware of that. He told her not to worry too much, because he sincerely hoped that Mr. Cha had nothing to do with his parents' deaths. Yooni June nodded slowly, her voice firm as she insisted that her husband was a good man, someone who could never do something so horrible. Then, suddenly, Daeho stepped closer to her, a mischievous glint in his eyes, and said that he wanted to do some exercise here. Startled, she told him to stop, reminding him that Seol-hee was present and that she felt so shy performing such a workout in front of her. Seol-hee, attempting to remain composed, told them it was fine and that they could do what they wanted. Daeho turned back to Yooni June and said there was no need to be shy. He was simply happy and wanted to exercise with her right now. Seol-hee stood there, looking bewildered. She thought to herself that she had known there was a strong bond between the two, one built with love, and it was something she could not break through. Yooni June, on the other hand, was filled with embarrassment at the thought of doing a workout session in front of Seol-hee. As their session came to an end, Daeho said they should quickly wrap up their power exercise. Seol-hee, still watching them, suddenly declared that she wanted to participate in the workout too. Later that day, Seol-hee arrived at the meeting spot, her heart beating fast. She stared at her phone, telling herself that the time was nearly here, but she couldn't shake the nervousness she felt. She kept thinking about the kind of person who would show up, wondering if she was truly ready. She reminded herself that Master and Uni were nearby, keeping an eye on her, so nothing terrible should happen. Still, the anxiety twisted in her stomach, making her feel uneasy. She turned around and caught sight of Daeho and Uni hiding in the shadows, offering her silent encouragement. They signaled for her to stay strong and be cautious. Seol-hee stood frozen in place. A voice in her head wondered whether they would be able to help her if the situation turned dangerous. Regardless, she knew she had to uncover the truth, for all their sakes. Suddenly, a car pulled up. She assumed the man she was supposed to meet would be inside and questioned whether he could possibly be a contract killer. The car stopped directly in front of her, and a man stepped out. She looked at him and greeted him, confirming that he must be from Black Wind, the one she had spoken to on the phone. The man didn't bother with formalities. He told her there was no need for pleasantries and suggested they get straight to the point. He asked how she knew Mr. Park from Myeryong Corporation. She introduced herself as Seol-hee, explaining that she was Mr. Park's wife and that she wanted to ask him about what he had done for her husband in the past. The man gave a knowing nod and said he had figured as much during their phone call. He remarked that he had heard Mr. Park's wife was beautiful and added that the rumors, it seemed, were true. Then, with a dark grin, he leaned in slightly and addressed the real question. He asked if she wanted to know who he had killed for Mr. Park. The creepy smile on his face grew wider as he stared at her with a chilling intensity. Seol-hee stood there frozen, trembling as she barely managed to utter the words. It was true. The man before her began laughing, his tone unsettling. From a distance, Daeho and Uni-jun observed the interaction, hidden from sight. Uni whispered that she was feeling frightened just watching the situation unfold. Daeho replied that they couldn't predict what would happen next and suggested they wait and see. Gathering her courage, Seol-hee asked the man directly if he had truly done such a thing at her husband's request. The man chuckled mockingly and told her there was no way he would admit to anything like that. Even if it were true, he questioned why she would think he would confess so easily. Seol-hee stood paralyzed, her face pale with fear. She asked him what he meant by what he had said during their phone conversation, and why he had come to meet her if he had no intention of revealing anything. The man laughed again, casually cruel, and said he had assumed she was calling to ask him to kill Mr. Park and then take his beautiful wife for himself. Shocked, she asked if that meant he really was a killer. He answered cryptically, saying it didn't matter whether he was a killer or not. What truly mattered was what she wanted from him. He pressed her to clarify whether she had come to ask for her husband's death or merely to obtain information. Seol-hee quickly replied that she hadn't come to request anyone's death. She only wanted to know what kind of deal he had made with her husband in the past. Again, the man laughed and called her a foolish woman. He asked what kind of person would simply give away top-secret information without receiving something in return. She insisted that she wasn't trying to interrogate him or report him to the police. She explained that she had no intention of putting him in danger and only wished to uncover the truth about a particular incident. She added that if it came down to it, she was willing to compensate him for the information. The man grinned and asked her how much she was willing to pay. She replied that she had seen how much he was paid in the past, and although she couldn't match that amount, she was willing to give enough to show her appreciation. He waved off the offer, telling her to forget about the money. He wasn't the kind of person desperate for cash. Fear crept into her voice as she asked what he wanted from her, if not money. From behind, Daeho watched everything unfold, his thoughts racing. He told himself that they couldn't just let the man leave like this. They needed to find out the truth, no matter what it took. The man suddenly grabbed Seol-hee's hand and leaned in, asking her what she was willing to do for a favor. He told her he was intrigued by her determination, her willingness to uncover the truth at any cost. She admitted that she wanted to know the truth, no matter what the price might be. With a smirk, he told her he wouldn't ask for much, only that she give him one chance to do a workout session with her. The unexpected request left her stunned and confused. Behind them, both Uni-jun and Daeho were equally shocked to hear such an absurd condition. The man began to explain his so-called workout technique. He instructed her to hold a position for 30 minutes without moving. She replied in confusion, saying she didn't understand what he was talking about. He barked at her to be quiet and just follow his directions. He said that if she couldn't do something this simple, they might as well call off the deal. Trembling, she pleaded for an explanation. She said she was willing to do anything except the exercise. He firmly told her that their deal hinged entirely on this. Whatever happened next, she simply had to perform the exercise. She tried to reason with him, saying that the arrangement didn't seem fair and asked him to reconsider. He brushed her off again and promised that everything would work out as long as she followed through with the exercise. He assured her that he would reveal the truth about his past dealings with Mr. Park after he was satisfied and pleased by her performance. She looked at him with trembling eyes, asking if he was serious, if he would truly tell her everything after that. He confirmed that he would, but only once he was satisfied. Without the exercise, she would never know the truth. Standing there in silence, she debated within herself. She desperately needed to know what had really happened that day, and this might be her only chance. If she refused him now, she might lose the opportunity forever. From their hiding spot, Jun turned to Daeho and asked what they should do for Seol-hee. Daeho replied that they couldn't just stand there and watch this happen. But even as he said it, his body remained still. Meanwhile, Seol-hee had begun the exercise, her limbs stiff and her heart pounding. She told herself that she had no choice. She needed to find out the truth. Her master depended on it. If that meant sacrificing her pride, then so be it. The man, watching her compliance, told her that he took her silence and effort as a yes to the deal. From the shadows, Yoonhee whispered in distress, questioning why Seol-hee wasn't resisting. Daeho, looking pained, said he didn't think there was anything more they could do now except watch. The man looked at Seol-hee with a twisted sense of satisfaction, remarking that he hadn't expected to get the chance to work out with such an elegant woman. He said it felt amazing, too good to be true. Jun, watching from behind, turned to Daeho and asked whether they shouldn't try to stop him. She said it looked like Seol-hee was in pain. Daeho responded quietly that there was nothing they could do. Seol-hee had chosen to go through with it herself. He added that all they could do now was watch. Yoonhee felt a deep sense of sorrow rising inside her. She whispered that there was nothing she could do to help Seol-hee. Breathing heavily, she demanded that he keep his end of the deal. He had gotten what he wanted. Now it was time to reveal the truth. The man gave a low chuckle and finally agreed, saying a deal was a deal. He then revealed that Mr. Park had made a request, and he had taken care of someone on his behalf. He clarified that he was only disclosing this because he had disguised the act as a car accident. There was no evidence left. A trial had already been held, and the case was closed. Nothing could change the outcome now. He warned her, however, that if things ever turned problematic, he would have no choice but to take care of her too. Then he asked her, with unsettling casualness, whether she was disappointed in her husband's actions. If she was, he offered to make Mr. Park disappear too, even offering her a special discount. Seol-hee, her voice shaking, asked him if he knew the identity of the people he had killed at her husband's request. The man turned around and replied that he knew a little. They had been a couple who ran a business and had a son in elementary school. He added that he later discovered the boy had ended up living with one of Mr. Park's associates. He asked her if she didn't find that funny. He continued, saying that he knew he wasn't a good person, but compared to him, Mr. Park was far more brutal. Daeho, who had been listening from the shadows, stood frozen. His lips trembled as he whispered whether that meant it had been Mr. Cha. Slowly turning around, he saw Jun crying beside him. Her sobs broke the silence. She was crying uncontrollably. Later, all three of them returned to the hotel. Daeho sat down heavily and said that the man might have believed it was Mr. Park who ordered everything, but based on how the money had been moved, it was obvious to him that Mr. Cha had been the real mastermind behind it all. Yoonhee, still shaken, mentioned that Seol-hee had been in the shower for a long time. She guessed it was because of everything that had happened earlier, and he said he was going to check on her. Later, Daeho approached Seol-hee and gently asked if she was all right. He told her she had done well that night and that, thanks to her, they had finally uncovered the truth about what had happened. He added that he would never forget what she had done for him. Seol-hee, exhausted, replied that it was fine. She had wanted to know the truth just as much as he had. But she admitted that her body had grown weak from all the exercise. Daeho looked at her earnestly and said she was wrong. She was perfect. He told her not to worry, that he would help make her strong again. He promised to teach her more exercises. Quietly, Seol-hee asked him if he was really okay with a woman like her, calling him master. June sat alone in her room, deep in thought. It had been quite a while since Daeho had gone into the shower. She assumed he might still be comforting Seol-hee in his own way. She whispered to herself that perhaps it was best to pretend she didn't know anything. Inside, Daeho was gently comforting Seol-hee, assuring her not to speak poorly about herself. He told her she wasn't dirty, and promised to erase every trace that might remind her of the painful incident. Seol-hee, her voice soft and emotional, said that this was exactly what she had longed for. He reassured her once more that what had happened would never happen again. Outside the room, June stood silently, struggling with her thoughts. She muttered to herself that she disliked how much time Daeho was spending with Seol-hee. She knew she shouldn't feel this way, especially for Seol-hee's sake. But despite her efforts, she couldn't shake the feeling that Daeho was drifting away from her, and she hated that emptiness growing inside her. Meanwhile, Seol-hee, lying beside Daeho, remarked that she wished she could continue exercising with him all night. But she noted that they had been there for too long, and Yoonhee was likely waiting outside. She suggested they wrap up their session and go out. After a while, both of them emerged from the room, and eventually, Daeho and June decided to return home. They boarded a train together. As the train moved along the tracks, June turned to Daeho and confessed that she was scared. She didn't know what she would do once they returned home. She asked him what he planned to do next. Daeho answered that he wasn't sure either. All he knew was that he needed to uncover the final, undeniable evidence. He said his only wish was to reclaim what he had lost. He added that since Seol-hee had agreed to help them, things would be all right. She had promised to keep gathering information in secret, without her husband ever knowing. Though he suspected Mr. Cha might be the one holding all the crucial evidence. June listened quietly before finally speaking. She admitted that it was still hard for her to believe her husband could have done something so terrible. To her, he had always seemed like an ordinary, gentle man. Daeho gently told her he understood the confusion she must be feeling. But the truth had to come out. He was convinced Mr. Cha had all the documents tied to the incident, the pieces of evidence he hadn't managed to destroy, and that was exactly what they needed to find. June nodded slowly. She said she would do whatever it took, no matter how painful the truth turned out to be. After a pause, Daeho looked at her with a teasing glint in his eyes and said that he suddenly wanted to do some exercise with her right then. June looked at him, startled, and asked what he was thinking. They were on a bus. Daeho replied that they still had 2 hours before arriving home, and he couldn't resist the urge to exercise any longer. June blushed and told him to stop talking nonsense. She said the driver might see them through the rearview mirror. Then, half joking and half curious, she asked why not test it, just to see if the driver would catch them or not. Eventually, the two of them returned home. As they stepped inside, Mia stood waiting at the entrance, looking both surprised and suspicious. She narrowed her eyes and asked why they were returning at such a late hour without informing anyone beforehand. She wanted to know what had happened and why they had to go to the city so urgently. June offered a vague response, telling her not to worry. It hadn't been anything serious, and everything was now resolved. But Mia continued to eye Daeho, her suspicion growing. Calling out his name, she asked whether he had gotten into some kind of trouble, and why he had taken their mother with him as well. Daeho, caught off guard, denied anything being wrong. He told her there was nothing to worry about and insisted that it was nothing serious. Later that evening, the family gathered around the dinner table. Uncle Yongu looked pleased and turned to June with a smile, saying it was good to have her back. It meant he could finally enjoy a proper dinner again. He then asked how things had gone in the city. June replied that it hadn't been anything special. She explained that Seol-hee had just needed some company and a bit of help with something, so she had gone along. Uncle Yongu nodded and remarked that Mr. Park was away on a business trip. He hadn't realized she was so close to Seol-hee. Then turning to Daeho, he asked why he had gone to the city in the first place. It wasn't like he knew many people there. Daeho responded by saying that he was now 20 years old and wanted to start chasing his dreams. He believed the city was the best place for that. Uncle Yongu laughed lightly and said he never thought he'd hear something so mature from Daeho. He added that the boy really was becoming a man. Throughout the meal, Mia remained unusually quiet, her gaze often lingering on Daeho. After dinner, the family dispersed to their rooms for the night. But Mia didn't stay in hers for long. She got up and quietly made her way to Daeho's room. Without knocking, she opened the door and stepped inside, asking softly whether he was awake. She remarked that he must have missed his sisters. Wasn't that right? Startled, Daeho sat up quickly, clearly panicked. He asked what she was doing there, telling her she couldn't just walk into his room like that. Mia frowned and asked why he was acting so strangely, trying to push her away. That wasn't like him at all. She stared at him, her tone growing serious, and said she was sure he was hiding something from her. Daeho tried to deny it, insisting there was nothing he wasn't telling her. But Mia crossed her arms and muttered that if he wasn't going to be honest with her, she'd have no choice but to force the truth out of him. Daeho shook his head and said quietly, almost pleadingly, that she shouldn't do this to him. Daeho expressed that he was genuinely exhausted after returning from the city and requested that they postpone the workout until the next day. Mia, however, questioned him with growing suspicion, asking if he was truly refusing the workout or if there was another reason behind his behavior. She insisted on knowing the real reason for his sudden trip to the city. He responded with frustration, demanding to know why she was so desperate to pry into his business. Mia pointed out that his trip had been followed too quickly by their mother's unexpected departure to the same destination. She claimed it was all too strange and urged him to tell her the truth without further delay. Daeho eventually conceded and said that if she truly wanted to know, he would tell her everything. Before he could explain, Sua walked into the room unannounced. She asked whether the two of them had finished enjoying themselves. Mia immediately snapped at her, telling her she had no right to enter Daeho's room without permission. Sua, unbothered, replied that she had already waited long enough and had listened to their entire conversation from outside while they completed what she sarcastically referred to as their workout. Mia was stunned and asked whether Sua had been eavesdropping the whole time. Daeho quickly tried to calm the situation by apologizing to Sua, explaining that he had no intention of doing another workout but had been pressured into it by Mia despite his exhaustion. Sua reminded him that he had promised to explain everything after finishing his time with Mia and told him that it was time to talk. Mia agreed, supporting Sua's demand and asking Daeho to speak the truth. At last, Daeho revealed that the real reason for his trip to the city was far more serious than anyone had imagined. He confessed that he had discovered something deeply disturbing about the death of his parents. For the longest time, he had believed that they had died in a tragic car accident, but now, he said, that belief had been shattered. Mia reacted with shock and disbelief, insisting that their parents had died in an accident, and that was what everyone had always thought. Daeho explained that this assumption had been completely wrong. What had truly happened was not an accident at all, but a carefully staged murder made to look like one. Mia was in disbelief and struggled to process what she was hearing. She asked how something like that could even be possible. Daeho went on to explain that he had found out someone had actually hired a hitman to carry out the murder. That was the grim truth he had uncovered during his time in the city. Sua, deeply disturbed, asked who could have possibly done something so terrible. Daeho admitted that he was not certain yet, but he strongly suspected that the person responsible was someone who had the most to gain from his parents' deaths. Sua questioned whether, if what Daeho was saying turned out to be true, it would be possible to uncover the identity of the person who had committed such a terrible act against his parents. Daeho admitted that his greatest desire was to find out who had taken their lives. Mia added that if the person responsible had been close to his parents, then it might be possible to narrow down the list of suspects. Still unsure, Sua raised the possibility that the information Daeho had received might have been false, and that someone could have lied to him about his parents' fate. Daeho acknowledged that possibility, explaining that this was exactly why he needed to gather enough evidence before coming to any conclusions. Without solid proof, there was a risk of wrongly accusing someone innocent. Sua agreed with his logic but added with a smirk that he was starting to sound a bit dramatic. Daeho admitted that there were still many uncertainties, and in hindsight, he probably should not have shared all of this with them so soon. He reassured them not to worry, stating that he could handle the situation on his own. He then told Mia it was time for her to go to bed and also urged Sua to get some rest. Sua, however, continued to stare at him in silence. He looked at her and asked what she was doing. She responded by saying that she suddenly felt like doing a workout with him and asked if he was up for it at that moment. Daeho let out a laugh, teasing that this was all her fault and told her to brace herself. He accepted her challenge and told her that since she was the one who initiated it, he would now take control and lead the exercise the way he wanted. Auntie June lay restlessly in her bed, her mind spinning with anxious thoughts. She wondered if it was possible that what Daeho had told her was actually the truth. The idea tormented her. What if her husband had really ordered someone to be killed? What if the events had unfolded exactly as Daeho suspected? The unease began to overwhelm her, and eventually, she sat up in bed, gripped by fear and confusion, whispering to herself, unsure of what she should do if that horrifying possibility turned out to be real. She slowly turned her head toward her sleeping husband, silently begging him to prove her fears wrong. In her heart, she pleaded for reassurance, desperately hoping he had not done something so unforgivable. Unable to remain still, she quietly got out of bed and began walking toward the staircase. Meanwhile, Daeho and Sua were engaged in another late-night workout session. Daeho had brought out a new outfit for her, playfully reminding her that they had done their previous exercise session while she was wearing a skirt, and suggesting they now try it while she wore a different top. He added, with a teasing grin, that this time they would take the exercise out into the hallway. Sua, flustered and embarrassed, questioned how he could ask her to do something so bold. She expressed concern, fearing what might happen if her parents were to wake up in the middle of the night and catch them. Back downstairs, Auntie June was walking through the dimly lit hallway, still unable to calm her racing thoughts. She admitted to herself that she probably wouldn't be able to sleep at all tonight. And even worse, she wasn't sure if she would ever feel comfortable sleeping beside her husband again. She couldn't continue like this, living with unanswered questions, suffocated by doubt. The truth had to come out no matter what it cost. Just then, a strange sound echoed from upstairs, pulling her attention away from her thoughts. She paused, confused, trying to identify the source. The sound was faint but rhythmic, something unusual for this hour. It didn't make sense. Her mind jumped to the possibility that it might be Mia or Sua. Driven by concern, she began quietly climbing the stairs. As she reached the upper floor, her eyes caught a shocking sight. Sua, caught in the middle of the hallway, was engaged in the workout Daeho had suggested. The moment Sua saw her mother standing there, panic overtook her. Flustered and scared, Sua begged her not to misunderstand and urged her to return to her room. Auntie June, stunned by what she was seeing, demanded to know what her daughter was doing and who was with her. Sua pleaded again for her mother not to come any closer. Her voice trembled with anxiety. Confused and shaken, Auntie June's mind reeled. Panic swelled in her chest as her eyes darted back and forth, trying to make sense of the scene. The thought that was slowly forming in her mind terrified her, and yet, despite her dread, she could not look away. She found herself staring intently, unable to stop herself from piecing together what might be happening. As she drew closer, the truth became clearer and more shocking. Her eyes finally landed on Daeho. He was working out with Sua. The sight left her trembling. With a shaken voice, she demanded to know what they were doing. Daeho attempted to speak but faltered. June, unable to contain her disbelief, raised her voice and insisted that he stop immediately. Daeho tried to apologize, but he admitted that he couldn't stop the workout just yet. June's voice cracked with distress as she told him this was completely wrong and questioned what on earth was going on. Daeho, trying to find the words, admitted the truth. He and Sua were in a relationship. They were in love. June stood frozen, her face a portrait of shock. She managed to utter the words that the two of them had grown up like siblings and insisted that such a relationship was unacceptable. She ordered them to return to their rooms immediately and warned that they would be having a serious discussion the next morning. With that, she turned and made her way down the stairs. Sua remained behind, staring at Daeho, and asked why he had told their mother the truth. Daeho, filled with regret, explained that he had no choice. Their secret had already been exposed by the situation, and he had hoped to avoid their mother finding out about Mia as well. With his voice breaking, he admitted that this was a disaster and wondered aloud how he could possibly explain everything to their mother the following day. In her own room, June sat down heavily on a chair, tears welling in her eyes. She stared at an old family photograph, heartbroken, wondering how things could have come to this. She couldn't understand how Sua, her shy, quiet daughter, could be involved in something so bewildering. Her thoughts turned to Daeho, and she whispered in despair that she couldn't believe what he had done to her daughter. By morning, June shared the entire story with Uncle Yonggu. His reaction was swift and fierce. Confusion and rage overtook him. Without wasting a second, he stormed up to Sua's room. His voice boomed as he demanded whether she was really dating Daeho. The idea made no sense to him. He stood there, consumed with anger and disbelief. Sua tried to explain, her voice shaking as she said she was sorry and hadn't intended for things to turn out this way. Daeho, trying to take responsibility, apologized and promised that he would make Sua happy. Uncle Yonggu, however, exploded. He shouted at Daeho to stay quiet, claiming that this relationship was wrong, that they were like siblings. Behind him, Auntie June stood silently, absorbing every word of the confrontation. Later, Daeho found Mia and told her everything that had unfolded. Mia was stunned. She asked what he was saying and why. Daeho explained that he had no choice. Revealing the relationship with Sua had been the only way to prevent their parents from finding out about his connection with Mia too. Enraged, Mia grabbed Daeho by the collar and demanded to know why he would do something so reckless in the first place, why he had risked doing the workout in such an exposed way. Daeho, weary and tense, pleaded with her to stop arguing about the past. What mattered now was finding a way to prevent further shock to their already overwhelmed parents. In another part of the house, Uncle Yonggu confronted Daeho again, his rage boiling over. He shouted that he would never allow such a relationship and accused Daeho of betraying the family. Daeho remained calm, stating that he and Sua weren't related by blood and that there was nothing unnatural about them being together. He insisted that it was time for their relationship to be accepted. Yonggu, however, was furious. He yelled that he should never have taken Daeho in, claiming he had brought disgrace into their home. Sua, unable to bear the harsh words, defended Daeho and told her father that he was being too cruel. But Yonggu was unmoved. He told his daughter that he had not raised her to end up with someone like Daeho. Sua, her voice shaking with emotion, demanded that her father apologize to Daeho. Later, Sua sat alone by the pool, tears running down her cheeks. Her heart was heavy as she questioned what she was supposed to do now. She couldn't imagine how she would ever be able to face her parents again after everything that had happened. Back in the house, June sat across from Daeho, taking advantage of the rare moment when they were alone. Her voice was quiet but laced with pain. She asked him how he could do such a thing, someone who had lived in the same house as him for so long, someone who was like a sister. Daeho, calm but determined, replied that nothing would change because of what had happened. He reminded her that he had lived with her in the same house as well, and that hadn't meant anything different either. June stared at him, bewildered and confused, asking what exactly he meant by that. Daeho answered that regardless of what he had done with Sua, their familial roles would remain the same. June's voice shook as she told him to stay away from her. She reminded him that he had claimed to be in a relationship with Sua, so why, then, was he now trying to exercise with her? On the other side of town, Mia and Yuri were sitting together in a coffee shop, quietly sipping their drinks. Yuri remarked that the coffee tasted particularly awful that day and wondered aloud if Mia felt the same. Mia, however, did not respond with words and merely nodded in agreement. Yuri noticed the unusual behavior but, unable to understand the reason behind it, directly asked Mia if something was wrong, pointing out how quiet she had been lately. Mia, looking visibly downcast and disappointed, stood up abruptly and said that she had just been feeling a bit low lately and would see Yuri another time. As Mia left, Yuri remained seated, deep in thought, trying to figure out what could be bothering her friend. Meanwhile, back at home, Daeho and June were engaged in a conversation about working out. Daeho expressed his reluctance to stop exercising, pointing out that no one else was in the house at the moment and suggesting they quickly complete their workout session. June, however, appeared hesitant and replied that they could not exercise right then, clarifying that she had come to talk about Sua, not to exercise. She emphasized that her purpose in visiting was not to spend time with him in that way. Daeho insisted that despite being in a relationship with Sua, he still wanted to continue exercising with June. June reminded him that Sua was her daughter and that all three of them lived under the same roof, stressing that continuing their workout sessions would be inappropriate. Daeho questioned whether she could truly live without exercising with him, reminding her of the promise she once made to love only him. She responded by telling him that if he was serious about being with Sua, then continuing their workouts was completely wrong from her perspective. Daeho argued that he still wanted to work out with her and claimed he could not suppress that desire. He grabbed her hand, declaring that she was his woman and that she should not walk away from him. Jun reminded him that he had said he was now Sua's boyfriend. She added that she disapproved of their relationship but pleaded with him not to do anything that would hurt Sua. At that moment, tears welled up in her eyes and she began to sob. Daeho stood frozen, his thoughts spiraling. He felt conflicted as if he could not accept what was happening. He told himself he would not lose her and that he could not let this situation unfold as it was. Suddenly, he shouted at Jun to stop where she was. In a burst of anger, he demanded to know how she dared to reject him and then, without warning, pushed her forward. His voice rose in desperation as he insisted that she was his woman and should not walk away from him. He challenged her, asking if she truly believed she could run away from him in the same house where they had shared so many workouts. He reminded her of all the training sessions they had done together, attempting to rekindle those memories. Jun struggled against him, asking what he was trying to do and what he meant by his actions. Daeho declared that she belonged to him, which meant he could work out with her whenever he wanted. He accused her of swearing never to exercise with her husband again and suggested that working out might help her recover those forgotten memories. She pleaded with him to stop, telling him he could not force her. He insisted that she simply perform the workout with him, claiming it was the fastest way to bring her memories back. At the same time, Mia had just exited the coffee shop and was making her way home. She was soaked from the rain and could think of nothing but how much she wanted to reach home and enjoy a warm, soothing shower. Jun was expressing to Daeho that he could not just force her to exercise with him, demanding to know what he meant by such behavior. Daeho, however, responded that exercising with her felt incredibly good in that moment and urged her to stop resisting. Suddenly, Mia entered the house, calling out that she had returned home. Upon hearing Mia's voice while still engaged in the exercise, Jun reacted with alarm, saying that since Mia was back, they needed to stop immediately. Daeho, however, tried to convince her otherwise, stating that they still had some time and urging her to consider it. Meanwhile, Mia began walking upstairs. Daeho continued speaking to Jun, assuring her that Mia would not come to that particular room right away. He speculated that she would head to her own room first, just like always, and said that Jun did not need to worry and should simply finish the workout. He added that this delay would buy them some extra time and further explained that Mia would likely lie down on her bed for a while before doing anything else. Jun remained concerned, arguing that it was still risky and that Mia might catch them exercising together. Daeho reassured her again, insisting that Mia would lie in her room for a few minutes before deciding to check whether he was home or not. He believed that she would then make her way to his room, open the door, discover his absence, and likely lie down on his bed, wondering where he had gone. He claimed that Mia would only come to Jun afterward to ask about him, as she hated having to go up and down the stairs multiple times. Jun, still tense, confessed that she was extremely worried about Sua. Daeho responded that everything was going fine with Sua. However, before they could say more, the sound of knocking echoed through the house. Mia was outside the door, calling out for her mother and asking where she was. Both Daeho and Jun froze in shock, quickly descending into panic. Daeho whispered urgently to Jun, instructing her to tell Mia that she was getting dressed and to ask her to wait. He stressed that they had no other option at the moment. Mia continued knocking persistently, stating that she had seen Daeho's shoes downstairs but could not find him anywhere in the house. From behind the closed door, Jun told Mia to wait a moment, claiming that she had been in the middle of something. Mia, puzzled by her mother's tone, asked what she had been doing and why she was speaking so strangely. Jun attempted to deflect, saying she hadn't meant anything odd by her words. Mia pressed her further, demanding to know if she had seen Daeho. Suddenly, without warning, Mia pushed the door open and found her mother standing there, looking visibly anxious. Jun apologized, claiming she had not seen Daeho either. Mia, however, paused and commented that she sensed something unusually warm in the room, as if the atmosphere had changed. She began to look around, voicing her suspicion that something felt sticky in the air. Turning to her mother, she asked what was going on and why the room felt that way. Jun tried to act normal and asked what Mia meant by such a strange observation. She wanted to know why Mia would say something like that and what exactly she was feeling. Meanwhile, Daeho was hiding inside a cupboard, overhearing the entire exchange. He too was growing increasingly panicked, dreading the possibility of being discovered. The tension in the room was mounting and he could feel his nerves spiraling out of control as he waited in silence, hoping Mia would not find him. Her mother tried to stop her from searching the room, questioning what sense it made for her to be behaving that way. Mia insisted that she could smell something sweet and sweaty coming from her mother. Jun, startled, asked what Mia was doing and why she was trying to smell her body, accusing her of being crazy and overly suspicious. Mia then asked if her mother had used some kind of pheromone perfume, suggesting that a married woman should not be using such things. She started going through her mother's dressing table, determined to find out if the perfume was there. Her mother pleaded with her not to rummage through the drawer like that and insisted that she had no idea what Mia was talking about, urging her to leave because she had other things to do. Mia, still suspicious, suddenly gave her mother a gentle slap on the back. Shocked, her mother demanded to know what was wrong with her and why she had done that. Mia then hugged her and explained that it was because her mother had such a beautiful body for a woman of her age. She acknowledged that while her mother's body was not as beautiful as hers, it was still stunning. She then changed the subject and casually asked what was being prepared for dinner. Jun found it awkward to talk about such things right after having a workout session with Daeho. Her gaze shifted to the cupboard where Daeho was still hiding, and she hoped she could get Mia out of the room so that he could come out safely. Suddenly, Sua entered the house, complaining that she had gotten drenched in the rain and announcing her return. She looked at her mother and Mia and asked what they were doing there. Mia explained that she was looking for Daeho but could not find him anywhere. She then turned to Sua and asked where she had been for so long. When Sua asked in confusion if Daeho was missing, Mia laughed and questioned whether Sua truly didn't know where her boyfriend had gone. Sua, annoyed, told her to be quiet. Mia mentioned that she had seen Daeho's shoes downstairs, but he wasn't in his room, suggesting that he might be in the bathroom. Meanwhile, Daeho remained hidden inside the cupboard, thinking that he had been in there for far too long. He wondered how much longer he would have to stay there and silently urged everyone to just leave already. Later, all the family members gathered at the dining table for dinner. Uncle Yanga mentioned that he hadn't been feeling well and had decided to take the rest of the day off. His wife, Jun, asked if everything was okay and whether something had happened at work. Uncle Yanga said it wasn't about work but about Sua and Daeho, expressing his deep concern over their relationship. He admitted that he simply could not believe the two of them liked each other. Jun tried to calm him down, saying that they shouldn't worry too much and that they couldn't just force them to break up. Yet, even while she spoke, she kept glancing at the cupboard, anxious that Daeho was still hiding inside. Uncle Yanga became upset, raising his voice at his wife and questioning how she could speak so indifferently. He reminded her that as Sua's mother, she had a responsibility and asked whether he was supposed to just accept their relationship and do nothing. Jun responded that if the two genuinely liked each other, they should at least try to manage the situation. Uncle Yanga snapped and told her to be quiet, blaming her for how things had turned out. He declared that he would never allow their relationship, claiming that Sua was his daughter and he loved her more than anything, and he would not tolerate her being with Daeho. He said he could not just sit back and watch them act flirtatiously under his roof. He raised his voice, making it absolutely clear that they could not allow the relationship to continue and that they must do everything possible to separate Sua from Daeho. Jun begged him to calm down, saying that he was being too harsh and that he shouldn't speak about Daeho like that. Her husband lay on the bed and sighed, saying that he had raised that boy all these years and this was how he repaid him, by going after his daughter. He referred to Daeho as an orphan who should know his place. He announced that he was going to take a nap and asked to be woken up when dinner was ready. Jun stood there frozen, unsure of what to do next. At that moment, Daeho emerged from the cupboard, his eyes filled with tears and sadness. Later that night at the dinner table, Mia thanked her mother for the meal and offered to wash the dishes, asking her to just leave them. Her mother was a bit shocked and surprised, wondering what had come over her. Meanwhile, Sua stood up and began walking toward her room, with Daeho following close behind. His face still looked troubled and sad. On the stairs, Sua asked him where he had been that afternoon, mentioning that both she and Mia had searched everywhere for him. Daeho explained that he had something to take care of on his own and had been busy with it. She turned back and asked him what he was doing. As he approached her, he asked whether they should do some exercise together. Sua refused, saying they needed to talk instead, and pointed out the risk of someone seeing them again. Daeho insisted that she follow him without asking questions. Sua reminded him that now everyone knew about their relationship and worried about getting caught again. Nevertheless, both of them entered the room. Daeho told her they needed to hurry up and continue their regular workout session. Sua protested, saying they couldn't risk it, especially since her father was aware of their relationship. She warned that if he saw them exercising together in the house, they would get into serious trouble. Daeho admitted that was true but confessed that, in fact, he wanted Sua's father to see them exercising together. He wanted to show him just how much he loved her. Sua, clearly confused, asked him what exactly he meant by that. Then he encouraged her to finish the workout session with him right away. Suddenly, Mia appeared at the door and saw the two of them exercising together. She asked if they had both lost their minds. Daeho calmly told her that there was no need to worry about them and that he and Sua were going to tackle the situation head-on. Mia looked visibly concerned and asked what he meant by that. Daeho only smiled and told her to wait and see. She asked again, confused, but he offered no further explanation. The next morning, Mia woke up thinking that a lot had changed since that day. Ever since their mother had seen Daeho and Sua working out together, the house no longer felt the same. The life she used to have seemed to have vanished completely. As she walked downstairs, she thought about how her father always looked tense and frustrated. The happy family she once remembered was nowhere to be found. She saw her mother in the kitchen, staring blankly, looking like she was in shock and unable to focus on her household chores. Just then, Daeho came downstairs, carrying Sua in his arms. Mia was stunned by the sight and asked what was wrong with the two of them. Daeho, with a disturbingly calm smile on his face, greeted Mr. and Mrs. Cha with a cheerful good morning. Mia stood still, thinking to herself that her brother and sister had completely changed. Uncle Yanga caught sight of Daeho and Sua together and immediately began yelling at Sua. From where she stood, Mia could feel that the two of them seemed to be deliberately provoking their parents, behaving oddly and pushing boundaries. Daeho casually leaned on Sua and asked Danjun what they were having for breakfast. Uncle Yanggu, overwhelmed with anger and frustration, demanded to know what Daeho thought he was doing with his daughter. Daeho laughed and claimed that it wasn't his fault, that Sua had come to him first. He said he had advised her not to do the workout session at home, but she wouldn't listen. Mia remained seated, frozen, watching the scene unfold. Her thoughts raced as she wondered whether they had truly lost their minds. She couldn't understand what they were trying to do. Uncle Yanggu appeared visibly frustrated and angry, expressing disbelief at the entire situation as his hands trembled uncontrollably. Sua was urging Daeho to stop behaving in such a manner in front of her parents. In response, Daeho pointed out that they were now a couple and asked if she was okay with that. Uni-jun raised her voice and told both of them to stop immediately, saying that the situation had gone too far and they could not bear such behavior at home anymore. She instructed them to sit down and have their breakfast. Daeho gently made Sua sit on the chair first and remarked that they were just about to have breakfast, which should be a cheerful beginning to the day. Mia observed them silently, her mind overwhelmed with disbelief, wondering if they had completely lost their senses. She couldn't understand why they were behaving that way in front of their parents. So much had changed since that day, and she began to realize that everything she thought she knew about her siblings had been wrong. In truth, she knew nothing about them at all. Looking deeply concerned, Mia reflected on how Sua, her younger sister, had grown up in the same house under the care of their aunt. She used to think of Sua as a self-centered girl so consumed with herself that she seemed estranged even from her own family. At that moment, Mia struggled to believe what she was witnessing. The Sua she had known no longer seemed to exist. Her thoughts also turned to Daeho, whom she had always treated like her own brother. Ever since he began living with their family, she had watched him grow and believed she understood him completely. But suddenly, he had transformed into someone unrecognizable, a stranger with a strong and aggressive side that had finally surfaced. She quietly stood up and returned to her room, feeling unsettled and strange. Her thoughts raced, wondering if she would be able to withstand someone like him. She had been trying so hard to ignore what she saw, resisting the growing discomfort inside her. But deep down, she feared that she wouldn't be able to endure it much longer. She contemplated whether it was time to stop them. Yet she worried about what might happen if her parents saw what they were doing, especially with the door left open. She feared that sooner or later she would crumble under the pressure, and when that moment arrived, she doubted whether she would be able to recognize who she really was. Suddenly, she saw Daeho and Sua working out again, their movements bold and unbothered. She trembled and urged them to stop, anxiously warning them about the possibility of someone seeing them and pleading for them to at least close the door. After closing the door herself, Mia sat outside and began to cry, overwhelmed by thoughts she couldn't silence. She felt like she was bearing the weight of everything that had happened, and as time passed, their actions only grew bolder each day. They often conducted their workout sessions with the door wide open, almost as if they wanted to be seen. They would use the money they received from their parents to buy all kinds of costumes and continued their workout routines not just in their rooms but throughout the entire house. Mia thought to herself that even though they were frequently caught by her or their mother, they simply didn't care. One day, their mother also saw Daeho and Sua exercising together and reacted in shock. She scolded them, demanding to know what they were doing and questioning the clothes they were wearing. She urged them to stop immediately, warning that their father was about to come home. Mia stood nearby, silently watching the scene unfold, and realized that they weren't even listening anymore. Nothing seemed to have changed. Daeho casually responded, apologizing to Mrs. Cha but reminded her that Mr. Cha still had time before returning home from work. Mia observed how he completely ignored what her mother had said, and she noted that her mother ended up repeating the same reprimand the very next day. June, while washing the dishes, reflected deeply on how much Daeho had changed over time. That night, Uncle Yanga lay on the bed venting to his wife that he could no longer take it. He reminded her of what they had witnessed at the dinner table and questioned how their children could do something like that in front of their parents. He expressed outrage at their apparent lack of shame and raised his voice in frustration. He confessed that he no longer understood Daeho and said that he needed to talk to Sua directly about the matter. He warned his wife to stay out of it and made it clear that he would handle it himself. As he got up and began heading toward his daughter's room, he told himself that Sua knew how much he loved her and that she would listen to him. As he climbed the stairs and walked toward her room, he noticed that Daeho's door was open. Hearing some unfamiliar sounds, he grew suspicious and wondered what exactly those noises were. Inside the room, Sua and Daeho were working out together, and Daeho was encouraging her with words of motivation. Uncle Yanga stood there, confused and overwhelmed. Slowly, he sank to his knees, unable to accept what he was seeing. He kept repeating to himself that his daughter could not be doing such things without his permission. Mia, emerging from another room, noticed her father sitting outside Daeho's room and asked what was wrong. She mentioned that she hadn't been able to sleep lately and wanted to know why he was there. As she approached, she saw her father trembling and quickly moved to shake him, asking if he was all right. Seeing that he was crying and shaking uncontrollably, she asked him what he was doing there and why he was crying. She then peeked inside the room and saw the two of them working out, immediately asking her father what exactly he had seen. Mia was stunned by the sight before her, completely shocked by what she had just witnessed. Ani Jun sat alone in her room, appearing deeply worried and visibly exhausted. Her thoughts were weighed down with frustration as she told herself that she had tried to speak to them, yet they refused to listen. She doubted whether her husband would have any more success, and she felt helpless, not knowing what to do next. Her heart was heavy with concern for her daughter, Sua. Meanwhile, in another room, Daeho and Sua were continuing their workout together. Outside that room, Mia was busy trying to comfort her father, who was still crying. He was sobbing, repeating how he couldn't understand how things had reached this point. Mia tried to encourage him to stand up and told him he should not have come upstairs. She insisted that he return to his room and avoid coming upstairs again. Despite her words, her father continued to sob, asking what they were supposed to do now. Mia replied that there was nothing they could do and that he should not have come there in the first place. Eventually, her father returned to his room, still crying. His wife was there waiting for him, and when she saw his tearful state, she grew anxious and immediately asked how the conversation with Sua had gone. Instead of responding with words, he simply embraced her. She began asking again, desperate to understand what had happened, why he was crying, and what was wrong. Her husband, still sobbing, explained that he had not meant to peek inside the room, but had accidentally witnessed both Daeho and Sua exercising together. He confessed that he no longer knew what to do or say as a father. The situation had left him feeling utterly powerless, and he could not believe what he had seen with his own eyes. At the same time, Mia burst into Daeho's room, yelling at him to close the door while exercising. She demanded to know if he had any idea what he had caused. Daeho looked at her, confused, and pointed out that it was the middle of the night, questioning the reason for her anger. Mia told him that he had gone too far and revealed that their father had come upstairs and seen both of them working out together. During the exercise, Sua asked Mia if their father had really been there. Mia scratched her head in frustration, confirming that he had seen them and explaining that they should have locked the door. She told them that their father's face had looked so heartbroken and he had been crying, but that there was nothing they could do about it now. Sua began to feel remorse for how her father must have felt. Daeho, however, reminded them that they had already informed her father that they were a couple and argued that he should have expected what they might be doing at night. Mia was stunned by his insensitive comment and told him to stop, demanding that Sua return to her room. Daeho, unfazed, stated that he didn't believe Sua wanted to stop working out either, and then turned to ask her directly if she wanted to continue. Sua responded affirmatively, saying that she did. Mia grew increasingly frustrated with both of them. Daeho admitted that he simply couldn't stop because it felt so good. Sua, on the other hand, still felt deeply sorry about her father. Mia stared at Sua, thinking about how she used to have multiple workout sessions every day even before this, and it now seemed as if she had become addicted to Daeho. She was no longer the cold and intelligent Sua that Mia once knew. To Mia, her sister had changed entirely and appeared to have become nothing more than a servant to Daeho's desires. Mia stepped closer to Sua and begged her to stop exercising immediately. Sua firmly refused, saying that she wanted to continue even more and right at that moment. Mia responded angrily, shouting that she should go ahead if she wanted, but asked if she had any idea what kind of chaos had unfolded in the house. She demanded to know what was wrong with Sua and what had happened to the girl she used to know. Mia declared that from now on, no one would be allowed to have workout sessions in the house, and as the eldest daughter, she was enforcing that rule. Sua shot back that Mia was the one who had had the first workout session with Daeho. Daeho interrupted, telling Mia to hold on for a moment and reminding her that their parents had already given him permission to go out with Sua, questioning why Mia was interfering and what her problem was. Mia countered, saying that no one had allowed anything. She reminded him that their mother constantly caught the two of them working out together and that she had tried to remain silent but now had no choice but to act. At that moment, Daeho grabbed Mia's hand, stating that he needed to punish her right then. Mia resisted and told him no, but Daeho insisted that he was going to exercise with her until she screamed and was completely exhausted. He added that he was curious to see how Mr. and Mrs. Cha would react when they heard about it. But Daeho ignored her protest and began exercising with her as part of the punishment, stating that this was something she needed to do. The next morning, Uncle Yanga gathered the entire family at the dining table. He looked around and asked if everyone was present, then explained that he had called them all together because he had made an important decision. He emphasized that he had stayed up all night thinking it through and that this was not something he had taken lightly. As the head of the family, he expected everyone to respect and abide by his decision. Mia looked at her father with confusion and concern, saying she had never seen him act this way before and asking what was going on. Uncle Yanggu responded solemnly, explaining that Daeho was now grown up and he had been thinking seriously about his future. After much consideration, he had concluded that it would be best for Daeho to move out and live on his own. The announcement left Daeho in shock. Jun tried to interject, arguing that the decision made no sense and that he couldn't simply make such a choice on his own. But Uncle Yanga stood firm. He told Daeho that he would help him find a room and cover all his expenses until he could become financially independent. He reassured everyone that there was nothing to worry about. Daeho's calm broke and he shouted that he wasn't going anywhere. He reminded Uncle Yanggu that while he may be the head of the house, he couldn't just force him to leave like that. Uncle Yanggu raised his voice as well and commanded Daeho to follow his instructions, insisting that he had no right to remain in the house and asking if he still didn't understand. Mia watched the conflict unfold, deeply unsettled, and thought to herself that her father was making an extremely harsh decision. But Daeho wasn't finished. He shouted back that when Uncle Yanggu had taken him into the family, he had also inherited the right to his biological parents' money that he was supposed to receive when he turned 18. He questioned what had happened to that inheritance and even brought up the house, implying that it might have been bought with that very money. Uncle Yanga was visibly shaken by the accusation. Daeho raised his voice again, asking if the house they were living in had been purchased using his parents' money and whether that was how they had acquired it in the first place. The entire family sat in stunned silence, their expressions filled with shock and worry.